one that we did last summer. I really want to hear some more about this procedure. Putting stuff on agendas.
Oh, yeah.
There's some stuff on here that, I mean, there's some other stuff, I just wonder how you handle it.
Yeah.
How you would handle it and stuff.
Sure.
Oh, we got 5.
We are live, Chair.
All right, Lauren, can you hear us and everything? Okay. All right, everybody, welcome to the May meeting of the Admin and Public Works Committee. This will be the last meeting of this council, and the last meeting of this committee as formulated as it currently is. So, with that, we'll do the roll call.
Chair Farmer,
Here.
Vice Chair Edens,
Here.
Councilmember Marshall,
President,
Councilmember Hopper, Councilmember Albers,
Here.
Councilmember Nyan, Councilmember Jackson.
here.
All right, with that, we've got enough people to press on, so I don't see anybody in the room, and I don't think I see anybody online for public participation, right? So we will press on from that and move directly into our information item on administration. Update on Safe Speeds, Safe Streets Initiative.
Thanks, Chair. I'll take this one and just wanted to give a brief update on something that the city's been doing with partnership with our Wildwood Precinct Police. Over the course of April in 2025, we had, well, over the last couple of years, we have received reports of loud vehicle noises down Clayton, Highway 100 and State Route 109. Along with that, Old State's also gotten some speeding complaints as of late. And we wanted to create a kind of a focused approach towards enforcement, but also communicating that it's dangerous to speed on these roadways, to kind of trickle back and enforce the law. And we thought it paired really well with the fact that they were starting the State Route 100. So in this case, in April, when construction had started for the State Route 100 resurfacing left turn lanes, the J-Turns project, we also worked with the Wildwood Precinct Police to step up some enforcement over 4 total coordinated weekends over the course of April and May. 2 of those weekends have transpired. Of that, over 100 stops were made in these dedicated enforcement zones. So in that case, just wanted to provide a quick update tonight. The memorandum kind of provides a little bit more background. This information's been shared on our website. We've been putting it out on social media quite frequently, just reminding residents. But the idea here is not only should you be abiding by the law, but you should be driving respectfully, not at 2 a.m. flaring your exhaust down the street and burning out tires. And on top of that, also just making sure you're driving respectfully in these construction zones, because it lined well too with National Work Zone Awareness Week that took place from the 21st to the 26th. So all this came together. We do have a message board also deployed on State Route 100 near the pathway. And also we are working to get a speed trailer put on Old State Road. So that's the most recent update. There will be 2 weekends in the month of May. Now, it hasn't been determined if it's this weekend or we're going to start up again next weekend, but there will be 2 additional weekends this month, and we'll try to sporadically, touch upon this here or then in the future. But we're trying to really focus in on the first 2 months to make sure the message is clear and have a coordinated effort towards it. But the department's available for any questions.
All right, any questions?
Any repeat offenders?
It's not from what I've heard. It seems, I guess we have one officer in the room. I don't know if he could speak to that, but it seems like it's definitely a wide ranging group of folks that are.
Figured. That's good though. I know the neighbors at Brightleaf, the ones that were so concerned about it. Again, you come outside and the noise, and again, they're just really pleased with something about it, so.
How is this in comparison to not speed track month or whatever we want to call it?
So where it comes down to, and I would like to thank our precinct captain, because he was able to secure some additional funding from the state to make this happen, because quite frankly, it's very expensive to have those bodies out there. Typically, you're having our officers, we have 2 traffic officers that are constantly rotating through and through, but they do split their shifts. And the other thing is we have 5 beats that are being maintained hopefully at all given times. This has dedicated in excess of 5, I won't say the exact word because I don't want to give people a counting number, but in excess of 5 additional officers along these roadways, specifically focused on speed enforcement and monitoring for the loud excessive noise. So it net gain of about excess of 5.
Well, I guess I'm asking, like, so we've pulled over 100 people or so, right? In a normal amount of time.
It would be it's kind of hard to compare because it's 2 different weekends, but it's most likely more like 20. So it's not nearly as high.
Awesome.
So what's a ticket going these days for?
Well,
What kind of a ticket will they be cited?
Well, it depends on how fast they're going too. So, I mean, if they're going, usually the police officer, they're gonna give some leeway. Once again, there's a police officer in here, so I don't want to overspeak their operations. But yeah, they're gonna give them some leeway because some vehicles, the gauge that shows them the speed limit within the vehicle can be off. So that's when you hear that 5 mile per hour up or down. That's where that comes from. But I would say if you're going, 20 over, you're gonna be having a good time in court.
So we'll probably see these come through then on court reports?
Yep, you should see a small uptick probably within the next 2 months, I would say.
Well, I mean,
Start seeing it.
it's actually less about that and more about the awareness side of it.
I would say that we definitely, at the end of the day, tickets we're writing are one thing, but I would say that this also speaks to the awareness where we're putting it out on social and whatnot too. It's just hopefully the folks that are speeding through 100 or 109, maybe they got pulled over, maybe they got their first ticket in a long time and they see the messaging on our social media, they see it through our e-newsletter and they say, oh, wow, this is, they're redoing the road and they're not playing around. So I'd say public safety is the number one goal here.
I'm just thinking specifically in Manchester, I don't know if we'll know this. Are we writing? Are we stopping more people going west or coming east?
It seems like where it opens up is individuals that are, where people really speed is they're going west and
Yeah.
they pass the pedestrian, where actually we strategically put that message board sign in a good spot. Right as you come up to the pedestrian bridge, you pass Route 109, that intersection, and then you get to the 2-lane section and that's quite a bit of speeding takes place out
I just didn't, I thought it was, I mean, that sign is quite large, so I was curious to think, like, do we need to put the sign on the other side coming back and just to let those people know? Or are people just ignoring the 8-foot tall sign that says slow down and then blowing past it?
I think that the former is, because the other thing is with that, the placement of the sign where it's at now on 100, it kind of accomplishes 2 goals. If you're going west, you get exposed to it, but also if you're going north or east, north or south on Route 109, you're also seeing it.
Yeah.
Because you're most likely coming from outside the city, so you're taking 100 down. So you're obviously not getting it if you're heading eastbound, but then when you go back, you'll see it. So the hope is if you're hitting at least those 2 major thoroughfares, you're getting exposed to it and then hopefully taking the hint, if you haven't seen it on our website, social media, the large message board
Been out there.
posted, but sure enough,
I would assume a lot of those people are not Wildwood residents.
that could be. I do not have the data for that, so I can't speak to that, but that would be an interesting statistic to know too, because we do know Franklin County residents utilize it. And then if you look at 109, it's a whole plethora of individuals that use it.
I think they're doing a great job though. So.
Very good, yep, good stuff.
Oh, and we did not, I don't think we did. Did we?
Oh, we didn't, I forgot. All right, we'll go back. Mr. Marshall is gonna move to approve the minutes. Anybody care to second it? Any discussion or questions or anything like that? Lauren, you good? All right, all those in favor of the minutes, please say aye. Anyone opposed? Tracy's gonna abstain?
You're not gonna second.
Oh, well, yeah, Cliff seconded, or Lauren, either one. All right, the minutes pass. That brings us, to anything else on the streets?
Other than the department will continue to provide some updates in the weekly report, so we'll usually on Fridays, if it's about to be one of those enforcement weekends, we're going to help heads up that, hey, this weekend we'll be rolling them out there, but other than that, it's gonna be 2 weekends in May. Focusing in, hopefully we can take advantage of the Memorial Day holiday too.
I think I might suggest, once it's all done and we have some time to like actually compile that data, that we find a equitable way to like put that out too. Even including, are they Wildwood residents, are they coming from other places? Not to like disparage anyone in particular, but I think it would be interesting to note that if, 80% of them are
Are
Wildwood.
they doing it on a holiday weekend at all?
Memorial.
As of right now, it's dependent on the resources the police department has on them, so in this case, it's kind of by year, but it will be 2 weekends in May.
Mr.
So
Jackson.
just one further suggestion, Rick helped out, I think it was about 2 years ago. I received a complaint of a resident on Henkin about speeding, and we put just the speed monitoring sign out there on the road just to flash how fast people were going, so it alerted the driver that they were, sometimes people don't even know.
Yeah.
I mentioned it as a, maybe after everything is said and done, if that's I don't know if that was, you deployed it, I feel like for a month or two, maybe. Maybe deployment afterwards to reinforce the message of, hey,
Right now, we're actually, the captain of our police precinct is working to get a permit from St. Louis County, which should be easy enough, but it is somewhat difficult for Old State to put it on Old State Road, so we can kind of expand it's tough to put a plethora of officers over there, so we're trying to actually put that same trailer up, which we can definitely do on 100 or 109 too. We will have to get a permit though from,
What if we just put it there?
you could do that.
Who put, who's giving you the
What
ticket?
are they gonna do? Tell us to move it?
Yeah, that's the thing. It's happened before and we could definitely try.
I'm just saying,
You gonna widen the road?
yeah, I didn't know we couldn't do that. Okay, anything else? All right, moving on into our for action section, we've got a review and oh yeah, Lauren, go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, just I have a real quick question because I was talking to an officer at the last council meeting before it started, and he was explaining that the modifications that the cars had undergone to have the loud backfiring and to have the loud shift changes. And I know the cars do not come like that because there's a Mercedes in my neighborhood that's been altered by a teenage boy. So I was just wondering, in the same way that you know, normally if it was a different type of crime, you would go after a place that's, you know, hawking goods or selling it. Is it possible to have posters put up at the auto body shops that are making the modifications that, like, be aware if you invest in this or your child wants this, that it violates noise codes in communities and it's a ticketable offense? I mean, is that worth pursuing? Because there's areas making money off of this, and so I don't know where they're getting it done at.
I would think that it'll be the same as when I was a teenage boy and everybody had limo tinted windows, like if people are willing to pay for it, somebody's gonna be willing to put it in. And they don't care that much, I would guess.
I mean, I can't figure that like a normal dealership does it. It's gotta be someplace else. So I don't know, just a thought.
All right, anything else? Okay, that takes us to our for actions section. We've got a review and feedback of our city mission and vision statements. And before you do that, Tom, I have something that I didn't send to you yet,
Sure.
but I will send it to you. But I thought I would read it because everybody spent a pretty good amount of time on it and it lines up perfectly with this. So if that's all right, if everybody can bear with me for a moment, I'll try to do my public reading out loud, which is always exciting. All right, this is the council survey summary for the spring of 2025, compiled with a reflection of shared values and future considerations. In the summer of 2024, members of the Wildwood City Council were invited to complete a values and priority survey designed to explore shared priorities, long-term vision, and areas of alignment. Each participant completed this individually, and it was structured to allow self-reflection without group influence or attribution. The intent was to clarify where consensus naturally emerged while still preserving each member's independent perspective. The survey was also intended to give city staff and residents a clearer understanding of this council's shared priorities and guiding principles. By surfacing areas of alignment, the goal was to make long-term direction more legible, both internally and externally. This summary represents the first time those insights have been compiled into a collective reflection. It is not intended as a mandate or policy position, but as a snapshot of shared themes, open questions, and common values expressed by this council. As new members take office, their perspectives will naturally shape the next phase of this conversation. This document is offered as a foundation, not a finish line, for thoughtful governance moving forward. So here's what we came up with. Governance, alignment, and shared direction. By the way, this is it comes out at the end. All we did was take all of our answers and I put them into AI, and then it read them and spit this out. So we'll see what it says. Governance, alignment, and shared direction. One of the clearest shared themes to emerge from the survey was the importance of developing and maintaining clear citywide goals, not as an abstraction, but as a framework for evaluating and advancing ward-level decisions. Rather than allowing localized pressure or proximity to drive outcomes, council members emphasized the value of transparent, principle-based structure that ensures all projects, policies, and investments regardless of geography, can be understood and measured against shared objectives. Quote, ensure that all ward-specific projects align with an overarching citywide vision to promote consistency and unity while addressing the needs of individual areas. One of us said that. I'm not sure who it was, but that's where they pulled that from. This reflects a broader understanding of the council's dual role. As one respondent put it, while each of us is elected to represent the interests of our specific ward, we are also elected to ensure the city as a whole fits into the vision our ward residents believe in. To do that, we must have a clear and consistent framework that applies across the city so that what we do and why we do it is transparent to everyone. And full disclosure being that was me. So there was that. This council's willingness to reflect, listen, and collaborate created an environment where shared values could surface naturally, offering future bodies a clear starting point to build a mutual trust. Areas of clear alignment. Environmental preservation is foundational. Respondents broadly emphasize the importance of protecting Wildwood's green space, trail systems, and topography. Preservation was framed not only as an identity marker, but as a planning constraint and long-term safeguard. Community character matters. Wildwood's neighborhood-based, family-centered structure, balanced between rural and suburban zones, was seen as central to the city's continued appeal. Respondents showed strong interest in maintaining this identity as growth pressures increase. Transparency and ethical governance are non-negotiable. Council members consistently affirm the importance of public accountability, clear communication, and decision-making rooted in community trust and fiscal responsibility. The master plan should guide growth with some flexibility. The master plan was affirmed as a vital policy tool. While some called for responsiveness to changing conditions, nearly all agreed that it should remain the city's structural backbone, not overridden, but adapted carefully and transparently as needed. Stewardship of parks and public spaces. Council members consistently identified Wildwood's parks, trails, and open spaces as a core strength of the city and a defining element of its character. The emotional and civic value of these assets was strongly affirmed. The consensus was clear. Preserve and care for what we've already built. Nearly all respondents emphasized the need to maintain and steward the park system, especially in light of challenges like erosion, invasive species, and infrastructure load. Quote, the reason our founders and many of us live in Wildwood is because of the beautiful outdoor spaces to enjoy. Parks and trails are nice, but we cannot continue to build them without resources to maintain. No significant push for expansion was present. Instead, the shared sentiment was that Wildwood Park System is a civic achievement and its continued care is a priority. Strategic emphasis and planning lenses. While council members align strongly on values, they often emphasize different priorities or planning angles. These aren't disagreements so much as different emphases on how and when to act. Tone of communication. Most supported a communication tone that is clear, modern, and accessible to residents. If you expressed caution about tone becoming too casual or overly branded, underscoring the need to balance approachability with professionalism. Growth strategy and town center development. All respondents agreed that growth should be intentional. However, what that meant in practice varied. Some supported modest mixed-use opportunities to support families and local businesses. Others prioritized caution, citing infrastructure capacity and rural character. There was broad agreement that any future activity in town center must be carefully aligned with infrastructure readiness, visual consistency, and community input. The focus was not on expansion, but on getting it right. Balancing present needs and future viability. Some respondents focused on meeting the practical needs of today's residents, maintenance, fiscal care, while others emphasized long-term vision and adaptability. These are not competing views, but complementary planning timelines that will continue to shape policy trade-offs. Quote, many responses reflected a commitment to governing not only for current residents, but with an eye toward the families and stakeholders who will shape Wildwood's future. Acknowledge challenges still in progress. Though many priorities were aligned, a few shared challenges remain. Infrastructure and environmental stress. Stormwater management, aging infrastructure, and trail degradation was cited as continuing burdens, especially as weather patterns shift and development ages. Restoration of degraded spaces. While preservation is strong, several members noted that many green spaces are now degrading or ecologically unstable, calling for more coordinated restoration strategies. Quote, we make no effort to salvage degraded spaces into worthwhile ones. Our watersheds are in crisis. These were not presented as crises, but as an ongoing responsibility that future councils will need to weigh in on carefully. Economic development and local business. While not a central focus of the survey, several members noted that responsibly supporting local business vitality is important for Wildwood's long-term sustainability. There was little support for large-scale commercial expansion. The most consistent thread was interest in community-compatible economic development that protects character while enabling a sustainable tax base. Closing note. This report is not intended as a position paper or directive. It is a snapshot, a reflection of shared values, civic care, and thoughtful differences of opinion among the current council. It honors the service of those stepping down and offers a foundation for future members to build upon. As the council transitions, this summary may serve as a bridge, offering future members a snapshot of the values and questions this body sought to navigate in service of the community. While not an official action, this summary may also serve as a helpful resource for future council members, city staff, and residents seeking to understand the current council's priorities. Processing note. This summary was compiled using data provided directly through the City Council Value Survey conducted in the summer of 2024 and was processed without modification or reinterpretation by a third-party AI system, ChatGPT by OpenAI. Responses were not altered or anonymized during analysis. Quotations are either directly pulled from submitted responses or, where noted, which I didn't see any notes, are statements made publicly by participating council members. This document is intended as a reflection, not a directive, and does not represent a formal action of the council. So there we go. That was our big survey thing that we did. I appreciate everybody taking the time. I think, although nobody got to hear these things beforehand, at least I think in the last year, we've certainly lined up pretty well on those, so that's a good thing. And I'm excited to see what the next council will bring to the table as well.
How many out of 16?
15. So that's pretty much everybody. I was pretty surprised. Yes,
You know,
sir.
just, reflecting off the things stated about parks, has there ever been an initiative for a tax increase to support parks
There was a couple years ago.
and didn't pass?
It didn't pass, but I mean, from my recollection, it also wasn't communicated effectively,
Okay. I
so
mean,
it's been a
usually-
while. I mean,
usually
am I
that's-
right, Ed?
Yeah, but that, it was not to maintain it that part, it was to buy the community park.
Oh, okay. Well, so then,
We
no.
voted it down,
Okay.
But then we bought it anyway.
and we bought it anyway,
Cool.
and that was a real popular campaign issue, you go out there and knock on those doors.
How
Yeah,
much
that-
was the increase for to buy that, do you think? What was the,
It was over, it was around 3 million, 2.3 million.
no, I mean, what was how was it?
I think.
Should the city buy?
Oh, I thought it.
It wasn't like.
It wasn't
are
a
we gonna
sales
add a
tax
tax?
increase?
No, it was
Nothing
just
about
to buy.
maintaining, I
Okay.
think maintaining would pass, I really.
Yeah, I think I mean, that, I know, I'm sorry to interrupt you this and this, so like, I know we've had conversations in
2009 or 2008 was when it was on the ballot.
where more than likely, I think it's like a stormwater and parks tax, like, I
Yeah.
think Ladue has passed that recently.
And we have talked since 2000.
Yeah.
That once we had a park built, once we had some trail usage, we should go out and get for water erosion
Mhm.
and for park maintenance.
Right,
Get a 1/2% sales tax.
yeah,
But the whole idea is let's show them Anniversary Park first.
Yeah.
Let's build something so that they know that we're doing it. And you just could never get the council
built
to
all
get
the
behind
things.
it.
And I think, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Tom, my reading of the tea leaves, we're not gonna get this money from the state most likely again
Yeah, it seems that way right now.
for the,
for the watershed.
Okay.
So I mean, this is now 3 years in a row that we
We need to do it ourselves.
we're gonna have to do it. If
Get rid
we
of
want it
our-
done, we gotta do it.
I think we need to fire our guy that's,
Maybe, I mean, I don't know that it's honestly, I'm not sure that there's a lot of levers he can pull. I mean, the conversation that has happened now is I don't know what I have a guess what the former governor's problem with this was. I know what this guy's problem with it is, and it's that Wildwood is just too affluent to get any money,
Yeah.
which is a perspective, but also I'm fairly sure that Wildwood puts an awful lot of money into the state, so it would be
Right.
curious to know how much of that comes back our direction, especially on things like this.
okay, no, it might be time to look at that kind of tax,
Might be.
for the erosion and parks maintenance.
Lauren, I see your hand.
Yeah, I've said it before, but just because I'm leaving, I'll throw one more Hail Mary football, which is to consider passing the internet use sales tax first. And the reason why is because you can only place that as a local point of sales tax for the parks and stormwater. And if you think about our stores and restaurants and businesses that we have here, it's not a huge base. And we already have, property, capital improvement, sales tax, all of these other taxes in our small municipal business load. But if you start with internet use sales tax, you're capturing a wider net. And then you can always wait a couple of years and add that other tax level on, and that will still be, the sales if it's put through an online purchase as well, and there's a storefront. So, a lot of the stores that we have, there are boutiques, you can order and pay some things online and have it shipped, so you're still not gonna capture some of that money, even at the local level. So I still think make the case for that broader net because the way people are purchasing things has changed forever. And once you do one in this economy, it's gonna be really hard to go back and do the other. So,
And I mean, we have a lot of stuff to pay for here and no way to do it, so we gotta get that sorted. All right, anybody have any other thoughts on our survey or any of that stuff? I'll turn it over here to Tom and he can.
Good job, though. Thank you.
Thanks.
I think it'll be useful to the new members.
I hope so, yeah, I mean, the idea will be, you know, anybody that's still on the council can read, if they have opinions that have changed, they can fill it back out and we'll certainly invite the new folks and, you know.
Or even dig into some of the questions a little deeper.
Yeah, I mean, my thing is, you know, if we're at a place where we have I mean, it's not gonna ever be, it's rarely gonna be agreement 100%, but if we know that we've got a majority consensus, which is what this is saying, then some of these questions can kind of be put to bed and we can focus on the ones that maybe
Well, so much of, 25, 30 years ago, society's changed totally.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, you look around and say, well, the town center, it was never designed to look like we have now. So I mean, all of those different pieces have changed. People's demanding change. I mean, it's not a walking community.
Yeah.
So, it's gonna be all walking community. I live a mile from here. I walk over, it's intentional.
Right.
But that's not the case for other people. So when we have all these stores built to go in the front side and out the back side, that's just not working when you don't have people walking on the streets. So I think a lot of the stuff, it's not that it was wrong, it's just times have changed.
30 years is a long time. All right, Tommy, anything you wanna add? I didn't mean to steal your thunder there.
Well, I think that was very nicely put. I'm excited to review it. But with that, and I guess, I honestly, I wish we could have that feedback to work.
I actually compared the two, if you
Okay.
want me to
I-
tell you what the comparison is.
Yeah, let's see that.
Let me pull it up, give me 1 sec.
And then I guess I can provide a little brief overview of where this is stemming from to we'll wait.
All right. One of the things I know when I ran this the first time, I'm just gonna pull it up and make sure I get it right the second time around. Is, they basically line up pretty much exactly with what your memo is gonna say here. The priorities, I think the order is maybe a little bit different, but that doesn't mean that they're any less important. So that's, I think I would suggest, like I did actually think, I thought about this after we approved the memo. I thought it was kind of a strange time to do this since we're having new people come in, but I also know that it's important to get done. So here's where the lineup is. Where you keep going, you go and I will
Okay.
find this.
And this is something that, obviously, everyone knows that we've hired a new communications and economic development manager, and something that the city team has been working on, a dedicated group of us has been working to put together a refresh of the city's website. But as we've been doing that, we're also kind of auditing the website in a sense to see what documents and what pages, really asking the question, looking at Google Analytics and looking at all types of data sources to see, are people actually visiting this page of the site? Is it helpful? This has resulted in the creation of an FAQ that we're actually situating on the homepage. That's based off the calls that are coming into the front desk, but also consistent emails that we get. But really those quick, easy to answer. If they just had access to a quick answer, they might not even have to make the calls. Trying to get that info out. The other component though is that our communications manager was reviewing some of our language and had asked just a general question of, hey, when was the last time the mission and vision statement had been updated? And I said, it's been a long time. So me and her worked together to put together what's before you tonight as kind of just a refresher. But the idea is to kind of make it a little bit more direct, clear, and approach. I think a good word there, what I heard from the summary was approachable but professional. Trying to make the language a little bit more like that so it can be utilized on other documents that we're publishing. So that was the thought tonight. We have some provided and proposed language. That said, obviously we wanted to open it up to the committee to get feedback and see if we want to change anything, or if we want to keep it the same way, that's fine too. Or we could wait until we get the new council in as well, which would be a pretty short time to wait too. So we could just bring this back as well.
Yeah, I mean, I know we originally, when we did our survey, we talked about trying to have a kind kind of a broader conversation among the council, and obviously for a lot of reasons, which we were doing other city business, we didn't get a chance to do that, but I think now that we've kind of seen it play out and how it lined up, which seems to line up pretty well, how votes go, I do think, I know in talking to Mayor Garetano, it's important for him and for you guys to be able to get a real clear understanding. So I mean, I think we can get, I mean, from a math standpoint, there are what, 4 new council members coming in, I think. So the odds of this shifting dramatically is pretty slim. That being said, I do think it's important to get their perspective on where they're at. But I mean, I think I'm happy to give this to you guys. And, you know, I think a lot of those details are in here. And if you have like really more specific questions, I can put them in this thing and they can probably answer them based on what we got. So it's just gonna spit this out in just a second. So it says. All right, here we go. Maybe. So we gotta work on the internet in this building. Oh, speaking of which, a little side topic, I know they're doing the stuff across the way at Deerberg's. I think that's the fiber cable running across the road. Is that right?
Very aware of that, yes.
So I noticed over the weekend that there was like a 3-foot section just hanging over the curb that I was like,
saw
somebody's
that.
gonna hit this, and then somebody wisely went and moved that over and then left a giant section in the middle where people are just probably assume driving directly over it. I know it's probably meant to take a load. I don't know that it's meant to take that much of a load.
It's not, and it's something that we've addressed the Spectrum. They should have been out there to clean it
They
up
were out there
today.
today.
Yeah, I was gonna say, they should have been out there.
I don't know if they're trying to get it underground restored and that should be happening as quickly as possible.
Yep.
I just don't, I mean, I went back and forth over the weekend, like, I don't know how much of the responsibility we as a city should have to have in terms of getting these guys to do what seems like literally the most basic thinking on something, like probably don't create a tripping and car hazard with a thing that I imagine if it rips, takes out half of the internet in that complex.
It definitely resulted in the, each time that had an issue, and it did 3 different times to 8 businesses.
Cool, and that's good to know.
Yeah.
Okay, here's the comparison. So we aligned on the governance framework. Both agreed on the need for citywide vision as the compass for local decisions. So we're gonna work hard on putting that together. We aligned on the environmental preservation. The message is the same. The memo elevates it a little bit more clearly. Parks and trails. The memo reorganizes this under alignment rather than challenge, but the message is identical and framed well. Growth in town center, the memo reframes the discussion as getting it right rather than choosing sides, but the substance is still the same. Yeah, that matches. Yes, there is nothing that does not match from what we got and what you got.
So in that case, is that comparing it to the revised statements?
So this is comparing what I read
Mhm.
to your memo.
Awesome. On that case, I'll take them both.
Okay.
Well, the idea today, this has to be, for the mission and vision statements, this will be published on our website, just in publishing documentation. We'll probably do something in the Gazette about it too, like we're rejuvenating this effort to, and kind of goes with our website redesign. It would, to actually solidify a mission and vision statement, since it's an organizational wide statement, it would need to be approved most likely through a resolution by the
Yeah.
full city council. That would, in theory, go in front of the new city council and during the second session next week. So
So I mean, we can do it however you want.
the department would be fine with the postponement
I
to the
think we
next
wait
meeting.
because these guys aren't gonna know.
At least 1 month or 2.
Yeah, give them a month to get it under their belt.
So just a comment on this.
Yeah.
The one thing I always think is interesting, and I think that people have this belief that when they hear something, that's what it is, and they have no clue that it's not something that city control.
Right.
And I just wonder if somehow tweaking a few of the words, we could clarify a little bit where it is up to the city, because when the state, and if you go back and look now, I mean, all of our cell phone towers, we have no control, the stuff that we thought we had control over as we incorporated, gone.
Right.
So I just wonder how you build that communication, that when you can, I guess you can assume you can always do it, but it's really hard for people to stomach the fact that the city can't do anything about those things. So-
Yeah, I thought the same thing. I know over the weekend, there was, the news came out a couple days ago about the LaSalle Institute, and there was quite a conversation on Mayor Garetano's page about that. But I mean, the truth of the matter is, I think it's important for the city to put out a statement to say, I mean, there's only so much, if they want to, it's just like if your neighbor wants to sell their house, like, you can love your neighbor all you want, if they're moving, that's how it works. And then we can maybe put out like, you know, at this moment, if nothing were to change, technically speaking, this is what could go there. I mean, I think that can apply all over the place because, you know, whether it's the two, you know, kind of historical sites or even, you know, over by, you know, N38 or where the, you know, the
So I mean, we always come back saying our master plan, our chart and all that stuff, but really comes down to we don't own the land.
Right.
So then you're dealing with the unhappy people or people with more money. We've had situations where they didn't like what we did, so they went to the state and got to override it. Used to be the driving range down across from Eureka High School, that lawsuit after lawsuit, terminated employee after terminated employee, because we wouldn't let him sell liquor across from high school. And next thing you know, the state came back and said, well, actually, he can annex into Eureka now.
Yeah.
So there's and that was a Wildwood representative who made that happen. So at the state, so I mean, I just think that's the kind of stuff that's really hard for people to grasp, and I think it's hard for all of us sometimes to wonder, why don't we have any say in that? So I don't know how you tweak it or how you work it in there, but maybe that's something that
Have something that's like decisions within our own control, kind of reframing like, hey,
we can only represent and respect the constituents for things we have any say on.
Right.
You know, when it's not ours to control.
Yeah, I mean, the conversation was obviously unfavorable in terms of what people thought would go in if the institute gets sold. But we have, I mean, number one, it would have to be sold, and number two, we would have to wait for somebody to bring us a proposal. But to kind of quell some of what's going on, it would make sense, because I mean, people are like, they're gonna put 700 houses here. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, well, probably not.
One of the nines got to be widened.
Yeah, right. And so I think putting out, you know, getting ahead and I do think where Paula will come into play with this and with her kind of history is, you know, understanding we as a city need to do a better job of getting out in front of these stories rather than letting, you know, a well-meaning but very misinformed person spreading things that are just factually inaccurate. I mean, we had that, in a way, we had that last time with the N38 with the news here that like, I don't know if anybody watched that story, but very little of that was actually accurate in any way, including showing what was being built, which happened to be our park. So, I mean, we need to do a good job of whatever it is, whether it's the speed things or the, you know, hey, we're putting out, we have invested this amount of money into putting this surface on Old State Road, which in all honesty is the extent of what the city can do. Like, just be honest and make it simple. And I would also say, and maybe this is more of a conversation, I guess, for planning and zoning, but like, I'm of the opinion, the vast majority of residents have no idea what zoning designations actually mean. There are R4 and neighborhood edge and whatever. All they see is 10,000 houses coming in. And so we need to just say, hey, if LaSalle Institute got sold and was built tomorrow, it could accommodate whatever it is, 99 houses. That's it.
we can definitely have that discussion. And we, for the LaSalle press release, I don't see any issue with that. We'll have to have the statement framed by the city attorney, but I
Sure.
mean, other than that, it's.
Yeah, but I mean, I think it's just that process, like the things that we know that are going or happening, because even, I mean, I haven't seen it, but you know, when the church across the way there sold and I know I got some phone calls that were, let's call them strange. And I would assume that that will continue as that becomes a little bit more noticeable. But getting out in front of that stuff is
How
important.
many suggestions about putting a park in where there,
I mean, a lot.
Everybody with
I mean, there's
without
a-
money.
I think there's 120 acres there, I think, you
Yeah.
know, that's a pretty expensive park.
But the other thing, and you know, I mean, you know, in fairness to the guy selling it, you know, it would also help people to understand, yeah, this is like the asking price is whatever it is, $3 million. So the city doesn't have $3 million. So even if we wanted to put a park in here, we
It
couldn't.
should be 12, 15 million. But they will have city water now, that's important.
There you go. That's all right.
Before that would have been a big problem.
Yeah, they got
All
a
right.
historic cemetery there too. That's
They do.
gonna be,
They got all kinds of stuff over
Yeah,
there. I mean,
yeah.
that'll be weird. Okay, anybody have anything else on our mission statement or any of that stuff?
Good job.
Go ahead and bring that back.
Yeah, so do you want a motion or does it matter?
No, it doesn't. Oh, I guess could we do a motion to postpone until a specific date?
You wanna postpone like two
Two
meetings?
months?
Yeah,
60 days?
two
Okay.
meetings.
Some of.
Made by Mr. Marshall, anybody care a second? Seconded by Ms. Nyan or Lauren, either one. All right, all those in favor of bringing this back in 60 days, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, we'll bring it back for the new council to get their perspectives. Moving on, that brings us to our deer sampling analysis. Very exciting, I'm sure. Here we go.
Thank you, Chair Farmer. The department's given a couple of reports. Obviously, it's a final report that was submitted recently. And we won't have to rehash those items if the department needs to, we're more than happy to. That said, recently we had 361 deer that were culled in the NE2 region. That's the region that's north of the Strecker, Shepherd area, Shepherd Road area, then also east of 109, all the way up into the Wildwood city limit. That said, after the completion of the most recent work, we wanted to have a deer sampling analysis conducted. We did one in 2024. The one before that was in 2020 when we first started discussing this professional targeted sharpshooting as a reasonable solution. That said, this year we were focused in on a couple different areas, obviously going back and checking the work for NE1 and NE2, and then also looking at a new area which encompasses the city hall that we are sitting in now, which is the SE1 region. We've actually gotten quite a few calls and a few residents have reached out along Old State and some other areas that would qualify in the SE1 region. So we wanted to revisit that area just to see. The data from 2020 was actually showing that there wasn't too high of a population. We wanted to check and see if that had changed because it almost serves as a good base statistic for us. That said, data is pretty good. It's showing that in NE1 in 2020, we went, and this needs to be taken with somewhat of a grain of salt because there are the 95% confidence interval is an important statistic to look at. That can range. Usually you're trying to tighten that range when doing these modelings, but truly what it is, when you do a sampling, you having officers go out and run a transect. A transect is just a route. You choose specific streets that you're going down. You have two folks that are sitting on both sides looking out into the adjacent yards, the areas, and they're counting deer. They're looking to spot deer and they've been trained up by the Department of Conservation, so that's helpful, but they're just collecting the raw data. When we get that data in, it's literally just the weather conditions, and it's how many deer at each location, what that exact location was, and then we send that data to White Buffalo, who did not collect it for keeping data separate, and then they come back with an analysis using, it's a pretty complicated software tool that we've tried to use a couple times, and it's very difficult to do the statistical modeling. It seems like it's built in 2003, so it's been very difficult. But that said, they have come back, and NE1 we've seen significant improvement over the last 2 years. And one little anecdote at the bottom will also kind of show that if you don't control for a certain area, it can affect your whole data set. So in 2020, you saw NE1 at 94.5 deer per square mile, and that's the average. And you have somewhat of a range, but that was the average. Then you saw in 2024 that go down to 73.5. And then in 2025, you saw it go down to 58.8 deer per square mile. So you see, after working for the last 2 years, you're seeing a consistent decrease, which is good to see because that means, especially with working there 2 years in a row, it shows that the replacement level of the deer is most likely close to zero. We can't confirm that, but it does seem that when we're providing the work in these areas that it's decreasing the numbers. So one thing I want to point out about NE1, which is the large farm property we have on the northern bound of NE1, if you take into account the deer that are observed along that property and along the Valley Road area, those types of areas, you actually bring that number down to 37.1 deer per square mile. So if you control for an area that we have not had good access, you actually bring that number down to where we're targeting. That said, I don't know if the circumstances will change in the future that'll allow us to get access to those properties. One that we have looked at and worked at on the last 2 years is the Boy Scouts property. It's a very large acre tract over off Valley, but overall, it's good to see that decrease each year over year. We actually had less work in the NE1 region this year than we did last. So this was really going back and doing some of the cleanup. So that said, that seems to be at a pretty good number for now, especially when you control for the large farmland on the northern edge. And then the NE2 region, you actually see even some even better stats. You saw, it's a little wonky though. Here's where we want to really just put this data under a spotlight because it is sampling analysis. So if you see NE2 in 2020, it was at 64.2 deer per square mile. And then in 2024, it jumped up to 94.2 deer per square mile. So that's a clear increase. I mean, there was no work done in the NE2 region during year one. And obviously from 2020 to 2024, that was a 4-year, each year increase for the deer population. But when we did the count back in March of 2025, we did the majority of the work in the NE2 region. We actually got that down to 34 deer per square mile, which is under the threshold of 40. Now the idea is, can we have it translate into deer vehicle collisions, which along Shepherd, along Strecker, we're thinking it will, and hopefully along Wild Horse and then 109 on those adjacent properties too. And then kind of the control here that shows that even though this data can fluctuate, it does also show that it's a pretty good method of collecting. It's consistent. At the SE1, which no work has been completed over the last 2 years. In 2020, you had a deer population of 40.3 deer per square mile. And in 2025, you saw it increase to about 42.9. So it's remained pretty consistent, but that brings up the next issue within our kind of our planning stage is right now we're getting into that phase of it. The SE1 region, we were kind of thinking that we were expecting to see a pretty significant increase just based off what we saw in NE2. And with the fact that our white buffalo, when they were out in the field, they did not have issues finding and culling deer out in the NE2 region. So there's clearly an overabundance of deer in those areas. But in SE1, our target, at least from the program goal, is that 40 deer per square mile. And it seems as if SE1 is kind of hovered right around that target goal. That said, when thinking of next steps, there's a couple ideas that the department wanted to present. One would include doing some touch-up work in SE1 to see if white buffalo goes out and gets property access along some key corridors in SE1 and then has a very easy job at hunting them and culling them. That could show that there's maybe maybe it's closer to the upper bound, which was recorded at 61.4 deer per square mile. But if they don't really have too much trouble, if they have quite a bit of trouble culling enough deer in the SE1 region, maybe that's not an area we should be working. So the idea is not to throw a ton of resources in year 3 toward SE1, since the data is suggesting that it's at a pretty reasonable level, and approach it in three different ways. One, revisit NE2 with conditions. So reapproach send out another letter and reapproach all the HOAs that did not allow common ground access in 2024 and 25 and ask them, we will include you, but we need guarantees up front. So before a contract would be signed, we would have that write-off for the common ground access, and that would almost be the permission slip needed to proceed. The next step would be going and having a limited footprint in the SE1 region, specifically along Old State, some of our more traffic corridors on the south side of 100, maybe a couple spots, but not necessarily throwing the whole campaign and all the resources at them. The other component, which could prove more difficult and it's just based off distance, is potentially choosing a route, either State Route 100 or State Route 109, and it's kind of moving away from our process here, but sandwiching one or the other and tackling the roadways that we're seeing the most deer vehicle collisions. So at the end of the day, right now on 100 and 109, Shepherd and Strecker, that's where we're experiencing the most numbers of DVCs each year. So we're looking at it from a perspective, we want to see the biggest decrease in DVCs as possible and stretch our dollar the furthest, because at the end of the day, we want to be able to show that direct correlation. This year, the most recent deer annual crash analysis showed approximately 20 less collisions in the NE1 region. That was just from 23 to 24. So we saw 20 less car accidents, at least for 1 year. It needs to be repeated over time, but that shows some significant progress. Now it's looking at the areas west of 100, but just along the State Route 100 area. And then also maybe looking at 109 or choosing an area with the highest density of deer vehicle collisions, and then sending out a letter to about points. We know that deer do not travel too far outside of their natural habitat, so they're not going from one side of the city to the other. So if you take a dot, put it in the center of Highway 100 and you go north and south, half mile each side, you're containing a large percentage of the deer population. Effectively, the ones that are trafficking across the road and getting hit by cars. So the department's somewhat different approach this year would be, since we did not see a drastic increase in the number of deer in the SE1 region, would be to deploy some resources there and still have them be included. But also to utilize the additional resources to actually start most likely looking at 109 or 100. We have to choose one because if white buffalo is traveling back and forth from sites, it's going to reduce the amount of time they're actually spending culling the herd. That said, we've got a pretty good understanding of where the deer are being hit. Usually it's west of 109 on 100, and we also see quite a few deer hit along the entire corridor of 109. But the department's just looking for feedback tonight. We're working with White Buffalo on some of these ideas. They did say that we would have to kind of choose a chunk of 100 or 109. We could not do the whole thing. It would limit their capabilities. But I do think you need to have also a revisiting of some of those subdivisions in NE2, and then also look at SE1 and offer that to some of the residents, especially along Old State Road. Department's Bill, for any questions.
Lauren?
Yeah, I think what made this year and last year so successful is we revisited NE1, so I think any proposal should include NE2 again. Just to re-hit it, like you said. And I think the other one you mentioned was SE1. I just want to make sure I understand. If we target the road areas based on the heat map, are we still expecting to call the same amount?
You said cold the same amount?
Yeah, because I guess what I'm asking is, you might have density that's higher over here and you could get more volume and maybe like less deer, but they're more, close to the road over here. So I didn't know if we did this, if we wouldn't reduce the population as significantly. And I understand that the car strikes are very important. I want to work on that, but it's not my only health concern. So the county and we need to advertise this too anytime we do deer updates, but the county is collecting ticks this year because alpha-gal is spreading beyond deer ticks or 2 deer ticks beyond the Lone Star tick. So there's other issues where bringing the population density down is still very important in addition to the car strikes. So if you have your ticks, you're supposed to bag them and drop them off, just so you know. Any tick at all, they want them.
Mr. Marshall?
I just think that if we did get some of the information on the automobile hits, and then maybe in those areas where we know there seems to be some residents that are in favor versus the homeowners association that may not be, I think we could make a pretty good fact sheet that would really be able to give the trustees what they need to support it, based on the fact that how do you say no if there's been 15 deer accidents right outside your entrance? I mean, put dollars to it and those, I bet we're spending $300 a year for plants that the deer would just ride off, So I mean, just when you get back to everybody, oh, they're so cute, they're so cute. Yeah, but there's a lot of car damage and property damage. That could be, so I think having the right information to go to the homeowners association and say, hey, we'd like to get 10 minutes in your meeting and share this with you. And they said, no, then let's figure out how to get something on their website. I think they just need help.
HOA, go straight to the residents.
Yeah, and just try to figure it out, but that would help.
That's the other convincing thing we do have is we have in the HOAs that we've had some issues getting the property access. We have on average about 5 residents at least, and that's just on the bottom end, that express interest, because we did try that. We tried reaching out directly to the residents. They were responded, but then, the property that they live on, and it was never the neighbor. We never got 4 neighbors in a row that were like, hey, let's all get together. And, and they would always ask, is the HOA cool with this? And we would say, well, we talked to them. They're not letting us use their common ground. Then they would back off. So that's, I think, going straight to the HOA and providing, hey, we're not going to tell you exactly where, but if you need it, technically you can make a public records request. We have at least 5 residents in your area, and I can name the address and the person who lives there.
Well, face it, none of the trustees want that job.
They don't.
I mean, just anybody who's ever done it. So, I mean, it'd be one more way to take some of that hassle off there, is to let them say, hey, the city said that this is the way to make sure that we can reduce car accidents and property damage and that kind. Let us be the bad guys there, but I think we have some pretty valuable information. Just like us, they don't want to get involved. And then you get one or two neighbors who just will continuously blame the trustees for everything.
Mr. Albert.
Thomas, do we get many complaints on the cost of this?
Not really, not as many as you think, and we've had,
Maybe I got the only guy. Okay.
Yeah.
there is, there's one or two.
Well, but nobody's done it, and we haven't done it over in Ward 8 yet. Everywhere
No,
we've done
but
it.
this,
these people
this
are
guy
done it.
was in Ward 8 that I accidentally talked to, and he thinks it's a ridiculous amount of money and
CFO Hunter.
I don't think he is. But he
Bet he might
thinks,
be.
he thinks we should be able to get a managed hunt of residents, blah, blah, blah. And I said, there's a lot of liability issues there, what I said. and-
It's not just that, encourage him to read the deer, the write-up that's been done on this, the deer management paper.
Yeah.
The managed hunts can't keep up, they're not keeping up.
No, okay, yeah, I just wondered if, and that's something else I could say, well, most residents are on board with this. I think I already said that to them, and the
And
city's really happy with that.
We do actually have, just for everyone's information here, we have, well, we don't, but the county goes out to Greensfelder and I think they do Babbler as well.
Yeah.
Where they actually do have managed hunts, but the return on those hunts, so you can, problem is with managed hunts is you're having folks from all different skill levels that go out.
Yeah.
And thing is too, they're looking for a buck. They're going out and they're getting a good opportunity to go after that real big trophy deer. And quite frankly, once they fill up the problem is whenever you have a group of hunters in general, if they fill up their freezer and they fill up their friend's freezer, typically that's when you'll see them stop showing up. And then the other thing is, I mean, if you don't somehow, the good thing about white buffalo, I will say this, that since they're being compensated, they are professionals in the field too. They've been excellent to work with, but since they're compensated, they really don't care if it's a buck, doe, or a fawn, whatever it is.
On a managed hunt, who would run that or oversee that?
Typically, it's St. Louis County in coordination with Missouri Department of Conservation.
Conservation.
So they tag team them in our
Yeah.
national park, not national, sorry, our parks within our city, our county parks, and they do an operation in Babbler as well, but it does not yield too many results. It's, I think it was like they had 100 hunters in Greensfelder and they ended up only calling like 80 deer over a course of a month. So it's just not ideal. If you're what I almost look at it as for utilizing these services, it's almost like a surgeon going in and surgically removing the abscess around the problem, and you're able to do it without having a large impact on the surrounding tissue, which would be our resident.
Right, okay.
But that,
So I've got a motion for you, or somebody if they'd like to make it, but I do have a question.
Mhm.
How many deer strikes are we getting in that Shepherd Strecker that farm where we can't get access?
I was actually pulling that up.
The Department of Conservation did a kill on that property. That's the.
Yeah, right.
They did that. How many?
He does
years
do it
ago?
on his own, yes, but he doesn't let
Which
us.
is probably why he doesn't want us to.
Yeah, he apparently doesn't do it well because there's
There's a ton of
million
deer in that-
deer over there.
that
They
property.
took 35 deer out of there in 1 year. Bottom, Department of Conservation.
Hmm.
10, 15 years.
Well, while you're looking this up, here's the motion I came up with. So if anybody wants to pick this up, I assume you're looking for a motion, right?
Yep.
Okay, so here's what it is. We'd like to recognize the success of the 2025 deer management program and continuing it in 2026 with a refined corridor-based strategy focused on areas with high deer vehicle collisions and herd density. The city further urges subdivisions along these corridors to grant access to common ground as continued refusal undermines public safety and shifts the burden onto other neighborhoods. Broader participation is essential to achieving citywide impact. If new access cannot be secured, the program will return to previously participating areas to preserve gains and prevent population rebound. If anybody likes that, they can pick it up or change it or whatever you want to do. But I think that does what you're asking,
I
right?
think so too. I agree. And to give you just a rough summation, it's the majority of the strikes are really occurring along 109, 100, but you do have the HOAs that we needed access for truly. They're along 109 on the east side. So that getting access to those properties would have provided a better opportunity for us to really address a small grouping of accidents along 109, as you're approaching Babbler is kind of the area that I'm talking about. And then we actually don't have too many collisions that are taking place along Wild Horse. There's, in 2024 alone, there was 4. It's not none, so it's not 0. So that's still concerning. That said, that was the other access point. That's same thing though. You have that area would still impact the deer that are crossing 109. It was close enough. And then the same could be said, you still have, and the crash analysis that I'm looking at right now, it does not reflect the most recent culling. So we actually are hoping to see a decrease. That whole quadrant up north, pretty much north of 100 and east of 109, we should just see that slowly turn off. I mean, at the end of the day, you could have residents that still hit them, but you should see it reduced. It's still pretty much tightly packed right north of 100 and going along Strucker.
Tracy?
So when you're talking about subdivisions along 109, because I do believe the density of the car accidents, but I also think the density of the residents, because odds go up if there's more drivers and so you're talking like Garden Valley, Oak Ridge Trails, West Hampton, right along
Yep.
there, right?
Cause that's right. And the other thing is too, what originally, how these maps were made, they were kind of, well, I quite frankly, the department was not involved in making the maps, but I would have had, and this is just a personal recommendation, I would have had the map extend across the street of 109 because you want to sandwich the main road. We did end up doing that for our mailers, so not to fret, but when it comes to an analysis of where this took place, where we could actually study, you want to repeat that same surface, that same area. So that said, we did operate west of 109 in some spaces.
Well,
but-
this would fix that then, because if you get enough people on both sides.
Yep, that's the approach. So
Okay.
going back and kind of revisiting and using kind of a sandwich approach in some of these areas to really try to crank down. So the other thing is, this program, noticing that this program is not the cheapest thing that the city does. So one of the things that the department wants to be able to hold tall, we saw 20 less deer accidents, it seems, if you want to see that repeated, but if you would head-on attack 100 or 109, like north 109, and you're able to say we reduced, number of car accidents each year by 50 to 60, we start getting into 100, that's 100 people that's lives are changed overnight. So I mean, over the course of a year. So I mean, I almost feel like deer vehicle collisions, when I speak with residents, and I've spoken to many of them, that is the most, and I would say that the ticks are a problem too. There are serious issues with ticks, the damage to properties. I get a lot of that as well. But the thing that is really going to get a resident motivated to participate is when you bring up the fact that we have, on average, in the last 5 years, 242.6 deer hit by a car in Wildwood each year.
That's being reported.
That's being
It's a
reported.
lot of money.
Yep, that's per the police reports. Yeah.
And then what's the average damage per car? I mean.
That's exactly it.
You just bring the dollar amount.
Yeah, and then if you take that, you start multiplying that out, I mean, I'm interested to actually know what percentage of the city, and it's not all Wildwood residents, but I mean, almost every staff member on the team has hit a deer going home.
I would actually guess that the number is much higher.
Yeah.
My
yeah.
daughter totaled a car with a deer 6 months ago and it wasn't reported
I
because there was no reason to report it. There was no other motorist involved. It went straight to the insurance company.
Exactly, and see, that happens quite a bit,
And
and
a deer wasn't killed along the road.
the only time, when
Most
you.
of the time they take off and they.
And to provide some clarity on when those are reported, it's one or two ways. It's, person hits the deer, it does die, but they report it to the police, they come out. Then it's taken care of there. The city actually does remove deer off our right of way, but then the state removes theirs, so we're not necessarily collecting that data. But the other side of it is if the police are called out to a scene, the deer is injured grievously and
Put it
it's
down.
putting them down, that they do also do that. So those are the two that we're referring to when we say at 246. I mean,
It's much higher.
yeah, so when someone hits them, and especially if they're in their neighborhood, it's a ding and they're just gonna turn it into insurance. If it drives, they're probably just gonna go home.
Well, and I've put deer down in my neighborhood that have been hit, not wanting to use their time.
Yeah.
So there are deer that are not gonna be reported, and so that number's low.
All right, well, who has interest in making this motion or a different one?
Rather,
Mr. Albers,
I'll make your motion.
okay. Anybody care to second it?
Did the motion include the open houses, or does that need to be part of the motion?
We'll do those naturally with whatever the next, we'll bring just for two things. We'll bring this back once we have like not even a firm proposal, but
Okay, alright.
we're going directly here, but we'll also at least hold at least 2 open houses. We'll offer them digitally and in person. And then we'll also send out mailers to any of the targeted areas.
Maybe I'll email it to you. All right, everybody clear on the motion? You guys want me to reread it, or everybody good? Okay, all those in favor of our motion to continue deer management and make it better, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, that motion will head your way here at the end of the meeting, Amy.
Thank you.
Next up, where are we here? Board action request process. Discussions establishing procedures for submitting action items to committees. Mr. Lee, is that you or is that me?
Combo, well, we could definitely, but we can both do it. All right. So, the chair and the mayor and I have discussed a couple of, just general requests that come in. And one thing that came up, we had a Board of Public Safety meeting, and one of the Board of Public Safety members had asked the question of, hey, how do I get an item put on the agenda? And it is something where they could have reached out to the marshal directly and said, hey, can I get this on the agenda? What this process that's being proposed and is in front of you tonight for consideration would do is offer a direct and almost a highway avenue kind of approach to getting something on the agenda that a specific council member and maybe another committee member wishes to have a full-on discussion about. So the department, after discussing with the chair and the mayor, came up with somewhat of a process that's mimicked in other cities that pretty much if you get buy-in from a couple council members, anything can be discussed at the committee level. It just needs to have a little bit, some rules based upon it having a description, and then also having some specific, how many resources are going to be used for whatever the project may be. That said, this would create a form online, which if something and it's not necessarily, hey, someone hit a deer and they called me and we need to clean that up, or hey, we need a pothole fix. Those are part of our day-to-day operations. This would be something more so, hey, I got a call and we need to, grade the side of this road because the sight distance is a problem. I need a report done, which we do to get those calls every now and then. And which would take a significant amount of staff time, could potentially take a lot of capital resources. It'd be more so for like projects that are being started or studied. That said, this would create a form online that would pretty much, it'd be almost like sponsoring legislation at the state level. You would sponsor an item, a subject. And in this case, it would be just submitting the form. It would notify the chair via email automatically. And then it would have the support of 2 other committee members that are sitting on that committee. And once that's done, it automatically gets added to the agenda for discussion. So it'd just be in an exact way, and this would be applied to our standing committees, but could also be applied to our Board of Public Safety, to our Historic Preservation Commission, to our Wildwood Celebration Commission.
The idea would be to make kind of a universal process across the board. So this isn't to like stop you guys from, if I'm the chair, it's not to stop you from asking me to put something on. That's not a problem. But it's more, especially if it's in a place where it's like, hey, we need to do a sound study or whatever, and I would be like, okay, but I don't want to have any idea what that actually means. So it's the idea of saying, like, if it is something that we determine is going to take a substantial amount of staff time or money, then the decision we're making in the committee when it's on the agenda is if we're authorizing the staff to spend that time and money, not supporting whatever the thing was, that then still comes back. But it's just to try to more or less to protect the staff from an individual phone call or two that's like, hey, can you do X, Y, and Z? And then they don't have the ability to say, I think that that's not a good idea. So
So they do have the ability to say no.
they do have the ability technically.
And the bigger issue then is the council doesn't really have the authority to go to staff and tell them to do anything. That's just the way our city is set up. A council member can't call and say, Rick, you have to do this.
Right.
So I mean, those are violations we've had over the years to try to say, okay, here's the way stuff works. I think maybe some of our problem is because I don't think a lot of people understand what falls under the two standing committees.
That's very true.
But I'd be very concerned about having that protocol set up for some of these other ad hoc committees. Sending stuff to historic preservation or sending stuff to these other committees. Because the people don't understand what that committee, I just know for years doing the safety committee. Just becoming in there and complaining is not gonna get you the street light.
Right.
But people think, well, if I just go in there, I'm gonna get that. Well, they have no authority to do any of that. So I mean, part of it is to really kind of clarify on these type of things, what gets done and when it gets done. And then the chair has the authority to put it under there. But the same way, the mayor has the authority to set the agenda for the meeting.
Mhm.
And if the mayor elects not to do it, 11 members can put it on there. So I mean, there's
And
a
that's,
lot of
that's
checks
still
and
in there.
balances in
The
it.
idea would be the mayor, but this is more of a committee thing than a council meeting thing. And then I would say part of this, which is maybe not super well described in here, is there's gonna be, the idea is to put a real clear line of what is ostensibly a subcommittee to a standing committee. So, you know, public safety is great, but everything they're doing winds up here. So they can do their stuff and offer their suggestions, but before we're putting a lot of time and energy into stuff, maybe those things matriculate to where they're supposed to start. So, you know, like nothing, for instance, against the Historic Preservation Committee, but they seem to be under the understanding that there is just a citywide open checkbook of whatever. And when it winds up getting to us, that is sometimes problematic. So it's really more to kind of streamline this as much as possible and I mean, I don't think it takes authority away from me as a chair. I think it actually, to be honest, it's designed to make a council member put a little bit more work into whatever that is that they're asking, because it's not like, I got a phone call from somebody, they want to do this. It's like, okay, what does that actually mean? So that's my kind of spot. Lauren, what's up?
I was just trying to make sure I understand. So if we're just in the committee and we get to the part on the agenda normally, like topics for future inclusion. So we can't all agree as a committee and just add something at the meeting. We'd have to go through this paperwork process, because that seems like we're just adding a lot of busy work if we can kind of agree on something as a committee.
So the idea would be
I
that
don't-
if something needs to go on and, you know, you wanna send a message to a chair and go, hey, can I put whatever it is on there? The chair can do that or not, but if it's something that they're maybe not doing, then you have the ability to go and get a couple other council members that are on that committee to go, no, we actually would like to have this conversation, and here's how that starts. Because I think when we do it in a session, then at the end of a meeting, everybody's like, yeah, sure, whatever, because we kind of we're not thinking about it in those terms. We're not thinking about it in terms of how much time and energy this takes or how much capital is being invested in stuff, because we're trying to move through other things. The main thing that this does is it's a protection mechanism, I think, of everybody's time and resources, because we do spend an enormous amount of time on things that seemingly come out of nowhere.
And we never have the votes to carry the full council.
Exactly. And then when it gets to us, it's like, how have we spent 6 months talking about this for no reason? It's not gonna happen.
And I understand that. It's just if you get a full group that says, yeah, that makes sense, then I think, you know, you don't need to go through the paperwork process. If I bring up something and the topics for inclusion for the future agenda and you guys go, why don't you get some feedback from your colleagues? That's appropriate. I just don't think adding red tape for the sake of red tape is appropriate in every situation. And so I see the use of it for part of it, but I don't think, I think, if you've got everybody in the room that says, oh yeah, we need to talk about this, because we've had plenty of meetings like that.
Yeah, but I think in that case, I'm looking at this room, everybody's got their screen out. So you send an email and you go, Ed, Cliff, you want to sign off on this thing? Yep, done. Email sent. Now it goes into like an official hopper where it doesn't get dropped. We don't have we were talking about this, we don't have a sewer lateral thing for 9 months on a coming soon meeting or whatever it is. It helps to ensure that what is appropriate to talk about is actually spent time on, and we're not inadvertently dropping things into cracks or whatever. That would just be my suggestion on it. I mean, I think as a chair of a couple different committees, I know it would be, it's very rare that I don't even think I can think of a time where somebody said, hey, can we talk about this? And I say, no, we can't. But in the event I did or somebody else did, it's a way to get that where it needs to be. But
So one of the areas that I think, because the way we do things, whenever, and it ended up being parks and planning and it always being a dumping ground for public hearings. We went through a few years where anytime somebody in council didn't like something coming forward, they'd make a motion to send it back for another public hearing. And that went to parks and planning. They would have meetings with 3 public hearings.
Yeah.
That they had no desire to have those meetings, but that venue was, it got thrown back over to them to do it. And the chair really didn't, at that point, more the staff was controlling what those agendas were. So I would always be cautious, and that's why I kind of think flipping people from year to year, you don't get people dumping on their committee if they know they're gonna be in it. I guess the other option is you just don't have to come to the meetings. But those are some of the things that, when you've seen it as broken as it can be, you just wanna make sure you don't set something up that gives that tool for people to start sending these in with 2, 3 people unhappy on a couple committees could be pushed it over. You can still say no.
right,
I mean, we hired a city administrator one time when the mayor wouldn't put it on the agenda. So I mean, those things happen. And so you just have to kind of figure out, how's it really supposed to work? The question I would have though is, when these things come up, we're not gonna be as good at putting it together as what I think the chairs would need. But the advantage of being able to do it is to you to look at it and actually dollarize those. The one thing I think we just need a whole lot more on is looking at budget expenses.
Yeah.
And if you can't do that, if you get all this stuff in work and nobody is putting a dollar amount to it, well, that'd be really nice. What do you want to give up?
right.
You know, so if that's part of the whole planning process, I just think that would be a real good
That's the
way to
idea.
get us to think.
Yep.
Nothing's free.
So the idea is you go to it's not even an email, like it's a form where it's tracked and it's like, you know, where is this coming from? Is this a resident complaint, whatever? What priority is this touching? Is this gonna cost money of some kind? Yes or no? And so then you can look at that very quickly and go, okay, well, you know, if this costs $100,000, is it in the budget? No. So what is it now that comes out? That's really kind of a question, I think, that because people can make these asks without actually having to go through that exercise, it's a lot easier for them to be like, well, I don't know, that's not really my problem to figure out, that's everybody else's. And this puts a little bit of a finer point on it for you to go, this $100,000 is super important to me, and I'm willing to convince 9 other people or whatever it is that it should be important to them. And if you're not, then probably we're not gonna have that conversation. That would be my take on it.
So
Yeah, we could
primary
definitely,
targeting it, though, it's on two large standing committees. Not gonna do with economic development.
well, in theory, something could go to economic development if there's something that, you know, there's some business issues that definitely come up that could go there. I mean, I think the sign or code review kind of initiated from EDC, but yeah, planning and parks and admin PW would have probably a bit more of them.
And kind of like we did with the budget stuff, this is, I think, gonna be like a part 1 of what's happening. Like, it's a part 1 of, these are the committees that wind up, like, this is the direction this information goes. So rather than starting, you know, bottom up, it kind of turns the table on that a little bit, where like, you know, if Rick goes to public safety and is like, we're getting a request to put parking signs in at whatever. Maybe that comes this way first and we go, are we willing to consider spending $9,000 on parking signs? If the answer is no, we don't need to waste everybody's time on this. If the answer is maybe.
So from a timing
Sure.
standpoint, if I could just bring up one more time, from a timing standpoint, if the request comes in, then it goes, you guys put the dollar amounts to it, then it goes to the chair, then it gets on the next meeting. If it's already in the budget, they're just gonna do their job anyway, right? So I
If it's
mean,
within the purchasing of yes, if it,
I just think that those are the kind of things that, this is really hard to communicate to 16 people.
Yeah.
To get them to understand it, it's not for you picking up the things that are part of ongoing department response.
Right.
Unless you end up thinking, is that totally broken?
Yeah.
Timeliness of it, I think, is a challenge.
Yeah, I mean, basically the idea would be like for instance, if we had this, if this was in place and somebody put something in tonight to talk about next month, it makes sense, assuming you can get that information to actually put that on the agenda for next month. If somebody put a request in, Friday night to have talk about today, that's probably gonna be the next meeting if it is taking, a large amount of effort or conversation or even compiling information. So it's really just about, I mean, I think that this is more of an issue probably in Parks and Planning. When I was on that, I had a lot of conversations, or I was part of them, where I was like, I don't even understand where this is coming from. And this seems like we're spending a lot of, sometimes real money, but a lot of times just time capital of everybody trying to figure this stuff out, and write memos and
Totally
whatever.
agree. No, I'm not,
Yeah, so
I
it's,
think we spend so much time on some things that we should never even be spending on, we don't have the money. Well, so, be polite, but.
Nathan, I see you got your hand up.
Yeah, I guess that's part of where I'm trying to get on this is ultimately what's the root issue we're really trying to solve with this? Because it seems like we're trying to replace just having a conversation and adding something to an agenda with a form.
I think the real issue is it puts into real context where things are actually coming from. So, it's not to say that it replaces a conversation. In most cases, if somebody's having a conversation, I think it also kind of makes the role probably of the person who's the chair a little bit more important than just the person facilitating the meeting, because they have to have the thought process of like, does this take time and money to do this? And if so, here's the direction we probably need to go. It's really not to make everything take longer. It is to correct an issue that at the moment doesn't seem to be a big issue, but in the past has been a major problem. So it's a
if
safety
I-
mechanism more than anything.
If I can devil's advocate this just a little bit here, then why wouldn't the chair, when they are requested to have something added to the agenda, already be doing that?
Because we do, I mean, I do, but at the same time, like somebody might have a thing that I just don't like, so I'm just not gonna do it. And then it gives the council members that are in that committee the opportunity to go, well, we have 3 of 8 people that actually wanna have this conversation. So whether you wanna do it or not, for whatever reason is up to you. But if you can get agreement on some of this stuff, I think it can happen. And I think it needs to be, to me, if you're putting your name on something, it's not necessarily just a rubber stamp on stuff. If it is like you going like, no, this is important and I want to talk about it. I think that's where it comes from. Me personally, I really can't think of anything I've said no to this point, but I know that is a struggle in other places.
So I think that's, I guess for me, I guess that's kind of where I'm coming from a little bit on that. That sounds to me like the issue is not, if that's what's happening and things aren't having a valid conversation and irrelevant things are continuing in a committee meeting that should not be continuing in a conversation, to me, that is an ineffective chair and an ineffective committee. And a form doesn't fill that. So to be quite blunt, you have somebody running a committee that shouldn't be, and everybody on the committee is just letting it happen. So if they're not standing up for it, I don't know that this form, especially because it has to come from somebody on that committee, is not really going to solve your problem. You're going to continue to have this. Well, now you're still kind of playing this sort of both sides of like, well, the chair still has control over what gets on the agenda, but you can submit this form with 2 people, not directly. I just think of this sort of the I guess the best phrase is a text message tough guy, right? Like, oh, I can easily fill out a form and get a couple people behind me to back me up in a form, and then you get to the meeting, it's like, all right, you guys really want to divorce this, what's kind of behind it, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh well, we kind of thought it'd be a good idea, and we kind of agreed, and then well, in a meeting, if the chair still steps up and goes like, oh, well, I still don't think that's important. And they take over the meeting and they kind of shove it down anyway. Like you're still not really fixing the problem that's coming up, right? Like it's still a procedural problem of who's in what places. And to me, it's more of a, what do we do when a chairperson is not doing their job and allowing relevant items to be on an agenda? Something to noodle. I'm just going, I
Yeah, I
feel like this
I
is
get what
kind
you're
of
saying.
over, and we're kind of trying to over process a problem in communication and just addressing the elephant in the room in those situations where, and so I'm sorry, Lauren, you had your hand up for a minute there. I know you really have a lot to talk here, but this feels to me like it is more of a, if you have a chairperson who's running a committee and not allowing relevant things are and not maintaining order in a way of like, hey, this thing's been kicked around 17 times. Do we really need to continue with this or not? That's not a form. That's a bigger problem of how do you address an issue when a committee chair is ineffective.
Sure. So, I got something for you on that. Lauren, what do you have?
Yeah, two things, well, three, but what one is my initial response when I read it was the same as Nathan's. But I do see the benefit of if you're creating a track record of requests, it can take the politics out of it and it can prevent maybe some of that pocket staff veto. So I do see that side of it. There is that benefit, but I do really agree with Nathan. The other thing is we've talked about really wasting staff time and about managing expectations, but I want to reframe the conversation because there is value in exploring residents' requests, even if we have to tell them no. That's part of the job that we're supposed to do and staff is. So is it really a waste to find out that we can't afford something or that it's not going to work? Because that's answering their questions and concerns. That's part of the job. So just because it didn't result in something we could do doesn't make it a waste. It answers the questions of the constituents. And that's what you'll see, later is that I had an issue that was brought up for years and we have a different answer than we had before. And that's okay, but that doesn't make it a waste of the committee or the staff time. The other thing is sometimes without exploring something, we don't actually have an expectation for how it can be done or how much it costs. So just throwing out the idea of we can't afford it. Okay, well, maybe we can't afford it this year, but maybe we can start budgeting for it or put it on the strategic goals and budget for it 5 years from now. But if we don't spend the staff time finding out that we can't afford it this year, we can't afford it 5 years from now because we're not planning for it. So what I don't want to see is us just go throw our hands up and say, well, we can't do it. Because if we did that in Watershed, nothing would ever get planned for or done. But we still have to plan to budget or try to afford it, right? And we're still at that stage now, but we can't just go, well, we can never afford anything, so we won't start anywhere. So I don't want that to happen. And I'm concerned that if the mindset is everything that we don't agree to do as a committee is a waste of time, that's not the point of the committee. Sometimes it is having discussions and as a body going, no, this doesn't make sense, because that's what the public expects from us. And so I just want to, I'm, just saying, no, it won't work isn't enough to make my constituents happy. We have to demonstrate that we did due diligence and looked into something. That's not a waste of time.
So I would say this, and I think this maybe applies to both, Lauren, your point and Nathan's point. And I mean, we have 4 staff members in the room. So I don't mean to offend anybody when I say this. You guys do a great job of all these things. But as Mr. Marshall mentioned earlier, technically, we are not supposed to call staff people and ask them to do things. Technically speaking, we are not supposed to do that. Practically speaking, everybody does that. So it allows our staff to have an ability to where, at the end of the day, they are lovely people that work really hard. They are not inclined to say no to any of us or a resident because they want to make everybody happy. That's what part of what their job kind of is. I mean, I'm of the opinion that we should be saying no to a lot more things than we do, but I don't have that job. So what this allows the staff to do is to say, hey, I understand what you're talking about. Here's the process that you need to go to do that. Send this form in, and then the committee that is directed to can have a conversation about whether we want to authorize time to be spent on this thing. And if the committee decides they do, then that conversation happens. If the committee decides they don't, then that's the end of that conversation until the next time around. But I think what is happening more often than not is we're tasking our staff members with a litany of things that is, it's not that any of them are wrong, it's just everything can't happen at once. And right now, and for some time, that's kind of how this has functioned. Everybody is, it's a lot of like putting fires out rather than planning stuff out. And so, to be honest, this is a lot less about who the chair and what that is and more about putting a protection mechanism in for our staff.
I would just add, and then I'll give up the floor, that this dovetails with part of the workforce strategic planning, because it may not be a reflection entirely of the folks on council or the requests or the personalities. It could be also a reflection that we're understaffed. And so you might be putting a process in place that would be better solved if we hired more people and planned for that. But I get where you're coming from, but I still think, I don't know.
Nathan, what you got?
Sorry, just circling back around, but adding an addendum, I guess, to what I had stated. But I think from that standpoint, I see the value in having a process for having things added to an agenda. I don't know that, and I will say process very loosely, but I think it's valuable to have a format in which things should be added to an agenda or be considered to add to an agenda. And maybe that's a conversation that we have outside of like, well, you need to get two people's approval or to jump on board with you, or just like, hey, this is, if you're going to submit something to be added to an item, do a little homework first before you want to add it on. So having some sort of format that says this is how you submit items to be added to an agenda to the committee chair. It needs to include these things. If any of it's missing, then it decreases your chance of the committee chairs taking their consideration of adding that to an agenda item. Again, if an issue is, if policy and our standard operating procedures and rules and regulations and all that say that council should not be contacting staff directly, then just tell everybody you cannot contact staff directly. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm a very black and white person in most cases. So when it's a thing that says, and I know that staff is always going to be super helpful and they're going to want to jump in, and it's not an ill intent from anybody on council. They're just trying to get things accomplished generally it's probably going to be a constituent that reaches out and is like, hey, can you help me with this? And then they'll reach out somebody, or, hey, I had a question about this. So totally understand both sides where it would come from. But if everything needs to go through committee and that's just what it is, then just make it what it is and just let everybody know these are the guardrails that you need to work within, and you should not email request to city staff specifically. Like if you have something, it needs to go through a committee, and then we can have the conversation and choose as a committee whether or not city staff dedicates time to that. Like, again, I just don't like putting process in place to accommodate those that just don't want to follow a policy appropriately.
I agree.
I agree 100%, but I think we have to remember we're gonna get some new people. And sometimes you just get somebody calling you and whatever, and people are gonna forget and do whatever. But I guess I look at this as an attempt to solve an issue, and maybe it's not the perfect solution, but we could try it, reconvene on it, whatever, 3 months, 6 months or whatever, and say, hey, is this working? How could we tweak this a little bit? Maybe we don't need it at all anymore. Maybe everybody's gotten how it needs to be done without filling this out, or I don't know. I just feel like there has to be a starting point. And maybe this is it. And then at that time too, get feedback from staff. Like, is this helping you? Is this saving you time? Is this wasting more of your time because you're getting these forms in? Or what are your suggestions? Or
So they won't
but I
get
feel
the
like we
forms.
need-
The forms will just come,
Come to the,
Yeah.
okay, but then they would get them, well,
if they get approved
If they
here,
get
then they
approved,
go that
okay.
way.
I don't know, I guess I feel like we need to start somewhere.
This does not, I just wanna mention, like, if there's your resident calls you because there's a pothole. This does not include that type of work. It's more so like, hey, we need to we need to start a project and we need to investigate, adding a shoulder to this road. Where it's gonna take a significant amount of staff time to go out there, visit the site, and then, most likely hire an engineering firm. The idea is to bring that to committee through one of these board action requests. And then have finances attached to it. Hey, if we do this, just doing an RFP, that could be, 10 hours of staff time, because you gotta do legal, it's gonna add a city attorney's review if it's a big enough project. Adding in those cost components that take something that may be just a simmering thought because maybe it's not thought of, because it's done by the staff, and adding some tangible numbers to it. But definitely, can read.
Yes.
One quick thought, I think you started with, you modeled this off of the process in other cities.
Yeah.
And that tells me that, or for me, I take that to say that maybe formalizing a process offers us a capability we haven't had. I'm with you, Tracy. Let's start somewhere and see what happens. So I support it.
And to me, it's a data point. Like honestly, I've been doing this, I think this is my 6th year. I don't know how much it costs to figure out if we need to put a stoplight in somewhere or do a traffic study. I just go, can we have one? And then, but if I knew, yeah, if you want to have one, it's $26,000, then I might, it's not that I wouldn't necessarily ask for it. I would just have a better understanding of like, what am I actually asking for? That's kind of the key side to it. Yes, sir.
I just want to clarify what I said earlier is council members can talk to staff all they want. They just don't direct staff to do something.
Thank you for saying.
Yes.
You can talk to.
Yeah,
someone.
yes.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, but
Yes.
that's the way the rules are supposed to be. Is you can talk to them and they can tell you, but you don't say, I want this done now.
Right.
And we've had that before. So that, I mean, that's part of, and to always make sure the city administrator is included in it. If we were to do this, and I think it's good, it, but the other part would be is once it does get on the agenda, hopefully we could have the research done as to what the cost is, or it's already in the budget, or it's already been planned, so that it may only be a note on the agenda that it was taken care of or is scheduled next month or whatever in order to do that. But I think it's a good way to get the discussion going. But let's not take it for one meeting and then say, now we need to research it, unless the whole committee wants to do it. I think it would let the staff then at least look at the dollar amounts or give you some estimates, so we don't lose a month.
Yeah, I think there's a threshold where like, if they have a pretty good assessment of like, okay, this is what this is gonna require, therefore it's gonna cost. That's a conversation we need to have.
Or we did it 3 years ago and here's results.
That kind of stuff, it could be easily, it's more so like, if you gotta do an analysis to get the analysis, if you will, to get the cost. Cause it might include, but I think most of the time, we've done most of the things at least once or twice where we've had. the
Could
contract in
we-
place.
Test it before we have it legally all documented and put into the protocol, or, I mean, can it not be tested by the two committees and try it out?
I mean, it can't. I think the big thing is I would suggest we need to have some level of official action to have it made as like a, hey, guys, like,
Procedure.
yeah, this is what we're gonna do, not if you would please do this, cause I mean, at the moment, we have people, I think, that do this the right way, but we haven't always had that, and we don't know that that's how it's always going to be, and so part of this is trying to put in a good planning and data point while we can to understand what's going on. Cause the other thing I think that's interesting with this is, if somebody's asking for something and it's constantly, it's a resident request, it's a resident request, it's a resident request, to me, I happen to have I have one resident of 2,500 that makes repeated requests. So,
I know he does.
so that's not to say, like, I am of the opinion that I appreciate his requests, I just don't do much with
I
it.
would have done to run for office.
Yeah, I did too. I'd be happy to compete.
He never answers after that. I think that's a good way to.
Cliff, you got anything?
No,
All right,
let's vote.
okay, Nathan, you got anything else? Okay. Well, here, we can wait till Rob comes back. Okay, so then in terms of our next steps here, I think I saw, if I remember right, there's a motion in here. I move that we adopt the board action request process to guide how items are added to council committee agendas under this process. Do we want to add an adjustment in there for like a certain period of time to see how that works? I mean, I would suggest probably 6 months,
months.
just because.
Yeah, some of it you might want to tweak in 6 months from now.
Yeah. So, do you guys want me to read the motion, I assume? I move that the city council adopt the board action request process to guide how items are added to council committee agendas. Under this process, a council member serving on a committee may submit a bar if it is co-signed by two other committee members, each representing a different ward. The bar is submitted to the committee chair and the city administrator. They must schedule the item within one committee meeting cycle 30 days unless placed sooner. If the item may require staff time, it shall be agendized solely as a request for approval of staff involvement, not an endorsement of the proposal itself. Each bar must include a clear description of the issue, requested staff action, if any, relevant background, and its connection to the city or ward priorities. Council members not on the committee may ask a committee member to sponsor a bar or request the chair's direct consideration. This process does not limit the chair's authority to place items on the agenda or affect the mayor's discretion over the full council agendas. The council accepts the bar form as provided and directs this process be integrated into standing council committee procedures. And then I guess we want to say we'll run this for 6 months. Anything else anybody wants to add?
Put it on the agenda 6 months for me to look at.
Okay, if everybody's clear on that,
Did you write it all down, Amy?
Absolutely.
we'll get it over to Amy. So if everybody's clear on that, and again, this will be a web-based form kind of a thing.
Amy, it's in the.
Yeah, it's on there. I'll email it to
Oh,
you. Anybody care to make that motion?
I'm
Mr. Jackson, make it. Anybody care to second it? Tracy's gonna second it. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed?
Opposed?
Lauren and Nathan are opposed. Any abstentions? All right. Well, sorry, guys. The good news is neither of you are gonna be back, so you don't have to worry about it.
Go ahead and send some in next week or so.
Yeah, you got some time. You got a couple more weeks. Send some stuff
That's
in.
right.
Okay. With that motion passes. That takes us to Public Works and our status on the MoDOT improvement projects in Wildwood. Mr. Brown.
Chair Farmer, council members, provided this to you last month. This is just an update of the current projects that are underway or expected to start shortly, relative to not only what MoDOT, but also City of Wildwood. So I didn't intend to go through it project by project. I'm available for any questions. If you have any at this time, we'll probably provide another update next month just to keep the current status on.
I just have kind of a generic one. Are there any ongoing projects that you're not really pleased with progress on? Throw a grenade in.
Not as of yet. Not as of yet, no.
Okay.
Things will continue as is. I
round-
mean, the roundabout hasn't started, so from that prospect, I'm not happy with that, no. The 109 BA South roundabout, we are at this point waiting for authorization from MoDOT through the Federal Highway Administration to allow us to bid the project for construction.
The roundabout at Wild Horse seems to be taking a long time, not surprised based on the amount of work that had to be done in that area, I'm guessing engineering wise. But you think that it's moving at a reasonable pace?
Well,
Until December.
that's the issue, is that MoDOT gave them a very long schedule, so they allow them until essentially this December to finish the project. So they're using the time that they were allotted to build it.
Did they incentivize getting it done early?
No, but I will say there are incentives, like one of the next phases is going to be to close South Atherton Road. Now, there is an incentive in there that says you can only use, like, don't quote me on the number of days, but I want to say it's like 10 days. So they did incentivize the contractor to keep that closure short. So from that scale, yes, but overall, I didn't check the contract documents. Bottom line is they have until basically December to finish the project.
I mean, they're gonna route everybody down Centaur for that, right?
Or.
They're supposed to route them over to Long Road,
Uh-huh.
Valley, but that's not to
The
say
people
the
that
locals.
still get Centaur.
Right. Because do we have isn't that the bridge that's iffy?
We're following their schedule, planning to obviously work around.
I just have a quick question on that because someone was asking. So I don't think I've seen this, but maybe I'm not looking at it right. It said, they're redoing the new concrete paving being demolished So they're demolishing some that was already done and
Yeah.
replacing it on southbound 109 at Wellhurst Creek. It was placed at the wrong elevation relative to the new northbound lane, and now they're having to rip it out.
That is correct.
It didn't look like that though.
No,
Like,
I think what you're seeing there is they did some temporary widening
Okay,
out of concrete.
okay.
And so that is being removed because it was only intended for temporary
temporary.
use for staging. of
So it
traffic.
wasn't done incorrectly and then ripped out because it didn't match.
Pretty common with roundabouts.
Yeah, they did it on Wild Horse too, where it was like a three,
I just
all of a
wanted to
sudden it
get
was a 3 foot difference and then overnight it was not.
Not the right answer.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. You don't see them use concrete that much for temporary work, but. some
I
cases
think that's
do.
probably.
They had some left over from the islands on.
You speed bump.
Anybody got anything else?
Oh, my God.
The only thing I don't think we have any control over it, but, and I don't think it's gonna be as complicated, but when they start putting the new one in at BA, like, there was a lot of weird elevation changes at Wild Horse and 109 where like your car is tipping and you don't know which way
Yeah.
somebody's coming from and it's elaborate.
still
So
weird.
the one at BA is, I think, significantly less confusing, or there's maybe less people coming from different directions, but if we can maybe try to ask them to think a little bit harder about how that works out or something, that would be good, because it was
I'm amazed there
wild
was no
ride at
accidents
sometimes, yeah.
because it was.
It is challenging to get all the pieces of the puzzle built, and roundabouts are probably a little more difficult than a lot of projects in that regard. So.
Well, I almost wondered if like a temporary stoplight up there would have made more sense than the stop signs, because you can't really even see where people are maybe coming from at times. It's gotten much better.
It has been confusing the last couple of phases.
Yeah, but I don't know if they can throw that in I don't know what the difference is on that, but that might be worth looking at. Okay, anything else? Okay, moving on. Review of contractor bids for ash tree treatment program.
Chair Farmer, council members, this next item has been an annual item essentially since about 2020 with our ash trees. We made a conscious decision in 2020 or 2021 to start treating our ash trees the better of the remaining ones that we had. We felt we could, defer some of the costs to remove and replace the ash trees, but also preserve some of the better species that we had, or some of the better trees that we had in neighborhoods around Wildwood. So the original goal was to treat about 400 of those trees and do it on an alternating year basis. So essentially 200 the first year or 200 the second year. It ended up being 394 the first, was the total number that we identified. And then we have continued in alternate years treating those trees. However, what we found out was in the odd years, 2021, the EAB, it started to progress far enough that I think that impacted our effectiveness for the odd number of years. So essentially, we would like to, are proposing to continue treatment. This time we are again in an odd year, 2025. So the number of trees is actually 87 trees, down from the original close to 200 number. Nonetheless, we do have a contract or a proposal from Omni Tree Service to treat trees for 2025 that I'd like to move forward with if the committee is in agreement. Prior to this year, we engaged arbor masters to do the treatment process, and that was based on the original bid in 2020. They extended their cost all the way up through last year from their original quote in 2020. So we went with them, but they declined to do that this year. So that's not really a surprise, obviously. So we did put a new RFP out on the street, and we got 2 responses to the RFP, which one was Omni Tree Service, which we work with, as you probably know. The second was Diamond Edge Outdoor Management. So Omni was the cheaper of the 2. So that's why we were recommending moving forward with Omni this year to treat 87 of the remaining trees in the odd number years for no more than $15,000. I would say that the cost we would estimate if we wanted to go forward and remove those 87 trees, which is certainly an option, would be about $130,500. It's obviously much cheaper to treat them, but at some point, if we wanted to make the decision to cease treating the trees and just remove and replace, that is certainly an option. And the cost to do that would be about $130,500. That's assuming $1,500 total cost to remove and to replace the tree.
Would they then have to be replaced? I mean, there's an additional replacement cost, or would they just not be replaced with something else?
So essentially, it's $1,000 to remove the tree, $500 to replace it. So $1,500 total. What we're saying.
You got anything?
And this is an annual, will be ongoing, this process, this for the ash trees?
It has for a couple of years.
It's for the treatment for 2 years. So effectively, 2 years from now, I may be asking you for the same request if we go forward.
I will say originally, I think we did start this like right around the time I came on the council and I felt that this was a dumb idea, but I happen to have 2 of these trees that we treat on my street and they look so much better than they used to, so that's nice. But I'm wondering, have we had Mike go out and just assess the ones and then like, I'm not saying we take them all out at once, but if he goes, hey, these 15, there's like no saving them, let's get rid of them.
We did, part of our tree replacement project last fall and last spring was doing just that, taking these ash trees that are in the worst condition and then removing those and replacing with more suitable species.
He has not done that for this year because they've just leafed out, but that is our plan. So if
Yeah.
they are too far gone, we won't treat them.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, I mean, this is a chance, I mean, I'm not, maybe you don't need us to say this in a motion sense, but like, this does work. I've seen it work. It works in some places better than others. I think we can lean on Mike, and if he says, hey, half of these trees are not worth doing, then I personally would be cool with like, great, let's treat these, get rid of those, and we can keep moving this thing.
He will not treat the tree if he deems it to be too far gone at this point. And we have seen that more likely the case in the odd years.
Yeah.
Even years seem to have done much better because we got those trees earlier than the odd years.
All right, well, then, so I assume you're looking for a motion to move forward with this recommendation. Okay, anybody, Mr. Marshall's gonna move? Oh, all right, Mr. Marshall's gonna make it. Mr. Jackson will second it. Lauren and Nathan, are you guys good on this? Okay, all those in favor of moving forward with the department's recommendation on the ash tree treatments, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? All right, that motion passes.
Thank you.
That brings us to the Board of Public Safety recommendation, gates, blockages, and Turnberry access Board 2.
Yes. A question on the ash tree thing.
Yes.
What about subdivisions in their common grounds? Do they come to us and ask us about who they should see to take those trees down, or do we recommend to them, or we just don't get involved in it at all?
We try not to get involved in it at all, but if Mike's out there, I do know in some instances, if Mike's out in the field and he's responding to something on the right of way and a resident notices him out there and asks the question, he's a friendly guy. He's gonna help you, give advice. And if someone wants to call, it's just more so if someone wants to call and get some advice on a tree in the common ground, it shouldn't be like every day, because then it's taking up all his time when you have quite a few trees. But if it's an HOA and they're looking at common ground, he'll go out there. And I think most people have met Mike and probably have seen Mike go out there and meet with some HOAs to help him with some of those
I'm
decisions.
just curious, did you get calls from them? Because I know some of them have had a lot of dead trees on their property. And
We do. And I mean, it's a good service that we have an arborist in the house. And if he has the time, it is a good thing to add. And I mean, our goal as a city is to keep trees healthy. So if we can do that, even if we're not necessarily responsible for it, it's.
thank you.
All right. Moving forward, I guess I can talk to this one. Since it's from me, or unless you want to do it, Rick.
Well, I had a little bit of information I was gonna provide if you want me to start, and if you wanna finish it up, it's fine. So, council members, certainly, I think you're aware of this issue, because it's been in front of you previously. Wanted to pass along some newer information relative to the gate that's been proposed at Cranberry Place and Strucker Road. I think, as you know, that location has been restricted for some years, due to concerns from the residents in the subdivision. This was more recently in front of a full council, and we were directed to provide, costs or more explicit quotes for cost to install the gate. So we did put together an RFP and got it advertised and got 3 quotes for a gate that is intended to meet the requirements of the fire marshal with Metro West. The good news was the low bid was comparable to what we had previously received. It was a company from out of state in Lynchburg, Virginia. So they say they travel around the country and do this kind of work, and they feel like they can certainly do it here. But the quote was comparable to what we had previously expected, so I wanted to pass that along. But I wanted to also reiterate some discussions that we had with the fire marshal. He has replaced the prior fire marshal and certainly expressed some concerns over the gate to the department. And again, the intent was if we move forward, we would want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to address their concerns. But first and foremost, he was concerned about the impact on their response relative to the current condition. And effectively, the concern was it will tend to slow their response, having a gate in place of the current configuration with the flexible posts. So we did take this to Board of Public Safety, by and large, because of those comments, to see what the board's response to this would be. And they did.
I have lost the audio.
You're locked up, Lauren. You're not moving. I guess you can't hear us.
We've got it.
Any?
Mr. Hopper, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you guys just fine.
Okay. So
Thanks, Councilmember Hopper.
Councilmember. She failing that, oh, there she is. She's moving.
Can you hear us now, Lauren?
not moving.
It's probably on her end.
Well, I'll text her. Rick, you can keep.
Okay. So I guess I was willing to pass along, the board did pass a motion opposing the installation of the gate at Turnberry Place as has been proposed, and they actually took a step further and made a motion to endorse a prohibition on the installation of gates or other obstructions on any public street and essentially in Wildwood, and then look to potentially remove any existing ones. So it was a pretty strong motion opposed to the idea of moving forward with the gate. And I would say Captain Mundell was there as well and stated the same concerns relative to potential impacts to their response, slowing their response. So I wanted to mention that. And of course, your farmer is our council liaison, so he can speak directly to that as well. And then finally, I don't think I'd mentioned it previously. I guess there's two final things I was going to mention. Joe and I got our heads together, and if you're curious, we did come up with a table in the memorandum that was provided, indicating that we believe there's 13 gates essentially installed in Wildwood. And they're installed for two purposes essentially that are allowed under the existing code. One is secondary emergency access. And the second is for private streets, private residential streets and subdivisions, and have a gate over their roads if it meets certain conditions. So we have 4 gates that have been installed essentially for secondary emergency access. We have 4 that are over private streets and private subdivisions. And then we have 4 that are also installed for access control in the parks, whether that's Rockwood reservations or Greensfelder parks. So those don't necessarily apply the same way. And there's actually a gate at Hidden Valley for Hidden Valley's control of their access. So I wanted to point out those 2 things as well, that we actually allow it for 2 reasons. And if they're installed on private residential streets, they have to meet a number of explicit requirements, but they can be allowed under those conditions. So with that, I will mention that we expect that we will have this in front of the full council work session Monday night in a similar manner. And I guess I will refer to Chair Farmer if he wants to talk further regarding his member.
Yeah, so I mean, I'll just say a couple things. I mean, our new fire marshal and Captain Mundell both were pretty clear that neither love gates. The fire marshal specifically, especially because of the kind of complexity of what that intersection is it just will affect safety and response time. Now, also because of where it is, I would imagine the fire department might come from the other side because it's closer, but something really bad's going on, whatever. So there, you know, this, as the memo says, it's not designed like we're not gonna go out and start ripping every gate down in the city or anything like that. But when something comes up and it, you know, it needs to be looked at, and especially in this case, because it has been a bad looking thing, and Lauren just texted me and said, oh, she's back. Can you hear us, Lauren? I don't think she can hear us. Anyways, the idea, the Turnberry thing is one instance of this, but this is kind of like a citywide thing. We had that conversation about the gate also on another newer neighborhood. So the idea would be, you know, the request or the whatever from the Board of Public Safety was, you know, they're not really in favor of any gates or obstructions to roads, period, which makes sense because whatever they're doing is gonna slow something down. And so, you know, my thought would be on this that, you know, we can certainly, we don't have to do anything other than just to say that we've heard what they have said and we agree or whatever. And then that can go to the full council. But I mean, I think it's a good thing to put this in place because we are having this conversation a little bit more than maybe we did previously. It is, this is kind of one of those things, although it did move around and up and down and over and out. I mean, I'm certain that Rick and the guys have spent, and ladies have spent a good amount of time trying to figure this out, not just here, but in other places. So I think that the idea of not blocking roads, period, is a good thing from a council standpoint. And then specific to this, I mean, their recommendation, as it was in 2009, was to reopen this road because it is ugly and it's weird. And the HOA doesn't care for it, seemingly. We don't care for it and shouldn't because it's not really our stuff. So it's just complicated. So that's maybe a bigger question. But if we are gonna take this to the council on Monday, I mean, that is one of those things where, you know, everybody that is currently about to leave has a lot of understanding on this. Certainly we can spend some time getting other people up to speed, but something sooner rather than later would be good. It was not ambiguous that the first responders are not a fan of any part of these things.
So for the 20 years that I was in Ward 2, I was there when the first gates went up, but the whole intersections are different.
Yep.
We never had streetlights down by Zix, there was none there. And there was a really bad hairpin turn there on down the hill. The school buses wouldn't even go up that way. So the idea was Turnberry said, we will take care of the drive-overs and then the fire department could drive right over them and everything else. Well, the gate's a whole different scenario because you can't drive through those or over that. The other challenge was Starkey was so narrow, the police couldn't even do speed enforcement because they couldn't get a car off there. So it's several times, anytime it got to the point there was two pylons laying down, they go back to, we have to take care of it. Well, I think the trustees have all changed. And you know, so the whole scenario has changed. They knew it was a public street. They had to pay to do it or we would have taken them out right away. So I just think that public streets should be, and where the gates aren't new, we've had them for years.
Right.
But I think in this particular case, and then the same thing as this one over here in town center, there is just no way we should put fire gates up blocking stuff.
Right.
The trash trucks, the Amazon deliveries, and you know, from the fire department standpoint, if they have a bad fire, they want other companies coming in the other way with other equipment. They don't want to have to drive, and it's really bad in Ward 2 over in Wild Horse.
Yeah.
It's a 20-minute drive back in there.
Back in there, right.
Now they have the fire gates, but I know for my 20 years, they never opened those gates up, you know, in order to go there. And then, so all of these secondary access were only driven by Monarch. Metro West and Eureka said, no, that we don't have that problem, but Monarch Fire District said they had to have them. And they destroyed a lot of property putting them in.
Hang on one second. Lauren, can you hear us?
Now,
I can finally hear you guys. I heard a little bit of Ed. I don't know what happened. All of a sudden, I just lost audio. I froze, you froze, and it kept booting me on and off and on and off. So I'm on my cell phone. So Spectrum isn't helping me, but AT&T is tonight. So I'm sorry I missed everything, but just whenever Ed's done, I'll get in line for a comment. But I can hear you now.
You're good. We were just talking, Ed was just giving some history on the gates and stuff, and I didn't get a chance to read your message, but I was saying that in the meeting that, you know, the fire department and the police were not ambiguous in whether they wanted roads to be blocked or not, and they have real concerns about how that intersection works for them anyways. It is very difficult, even as it is currently configured, to get trucks in there the way that they would like. So you're up, Lauren, if you want to add something.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say, initially with the other fire marshal, we thought it was an option. We meaning the HOA that wanted to see a change. I'll just restate for anybody else. You know, their concern is the speed coming down off that hill, which is why they felt like it was safer with the road closed. And the previous traffic studies, I think they were done as far back as like 2009, showed I guess, a lot of their concerns. My point is this, I am okay if a gate is not a viable solution. What I want is just something. And I think the residents want something too, because they would rather feel safe, and I did have a HOA meeting with Strucker Farms, and they had somebody flying out of that neighborhood. And again, there's no stop sign there because the road's supposed to be closed. It almost hit somebody on Strucker Road the other day. So if the purpose of a traffic delineator is to stop traffic but be passable for emergency vehicles, it is not serving that function. So the solution that we have is not working. So all I'm looking for is a solution that is acceptable, that is more attractive, and stops the vehicles.
So,
Stop sign.
Stop sign.
yeah, open it up, put a stop sign in.
I
Yes.
know the residents don't want that. And I'm gonna say that again, and it's because, again, the speed of going down that hill, it's just the way that the county, I guess, plotted that. There's some real concerns about parked cars, getting your mailbox and whatnot. So, you know, you're gonna have a bunch of angry residents if you try to open that up.
I mean, I understand and appreciate that, but if the directive from the people that need to get in there to fix stuff, and if we do this from a city standpoint and say we're not gonna block roads or put in gates, then I don't know how we do this one time and then not do it another time. Also, I mean, that intersection for as long as I can remember has looked not good. And even after the last storm, the fence got blown over, whatever that plastic thing is. I mean, I hear what you're saying, Lauren. I am cautioning you that the direction from public safety, which obviously we don't have to take if we don't want to, is to not do that. And in fact, to look at when it would be appropriate to open up places. Not that we're looking for places to do that, but to look at what that looks like.
Sure.
And I think-
I would just point out, but we just did the opposite for Deb. Because, you know, put in the stakes that can be removed on 2 dead ends. And I realize that's 2 dead ends between subdivisions.
Right.
But
I don't disagree. I didn't vote for that either because I thought that was dumb, but whatever. I mean, this is a different conversation, I think, than that. My preference would have been to have this conversation then, but we didn't, just like we didn't, you know, in 2009 when they said to open it up the first time. Mr. Jackson, you got anything? No? Okay.
Oh, is public safety sending us something about the gates?
This is it.
Okay, that's
Let's
this,
hear from that committee.
okay.
Yeah, I mean, so public safety's suggestion is to not put any gates anywhere, not have
Okay.
any delineators up anywhere. And where possible, I mean, obviously, we're not like gonna go like hunting and pulling stuff down, but
Right.
where possible to get an understanding of what that looks like. So, you know, this is a thing that hasn't really been cared for properly in a long time, so this makes sense. I know the people over in Wild Horse,
There's a picture in the memo, but.
there's also that, which has always been weird to me. I mean, people
Okay.
gotta drive 30 minutes to get out of their house. That seems nuts, but
Well,
whatever.
I think you told me this and I'm kind of sick of the gate word too, you know?
Yeah, you're the one that said, we gotta get out of the gate business. I think I saw that in the paper.
We were gonna have it at N38 and then this Ashley thing,
Yeah.
they've changed it now.
Right.
They wanna put bollards up.
See, that would also be, I mean, so for what we need, I mean, basically, unless you guys wanna add or change anything or whatever, we can do that. But this is basically just saying, yeah, we hear what public safety's saying and
Right.
we're pushing that for.
Yeah, I see that and,
There is currently a white picket fence that's in pretty decrepit condition at this time.
And the homeowners association put that in. The city has
And-
never done any maintenance at all to that.
Yep, and it's maintained by them. We actually had our staff go out there and take the piece because it was like hanging in the middle of the road, causing a hazard. We have it in the garage. And then there's only 4 posts that are remaining. So what they're pretty much, what the installation would do is we'd keep this the way it is, obviously with the curb. And then the gate would be installed here just to replace the posts. Oh, I
So the other thing to think about here is now there are islands that also didn't used to be there. So for fire trucks and stuff, making that turn, no matter what, is
Yeah, it's
extra
all
difficult.
different than it used to be. I
Yeah.
mean, that was one of the first council members lived on that street.
I'm surprised that that's how that worked out. Shocking.
She moved and I came in, 99, 90s. Yeah, but it was a big part back then.
It was, I mean, when I was a kid, that was a dangerous way to get down that road, and that entire section has been redone.
So the other, one of Lauren's comments though, the advantage of if you were to open it up, put the stop signs on there, the police could patrol the public street. Right now, they're not gonna go back up in there and sit there.
Right.
Because there shouldn't be anybody coming in that way. And that was a challenge for us. Said, well, how about these people darting? We have no place on Strecker Road to get a car.
Yeah, we had a hard time when we did the study. I think if I remember right, we had a hard time even putting the camera up there because we didn't have
Yeah,
everywhere.
it's just so narrow. So, but I think they come with a pretty good understanding, from a safety standpoint of.
If this is ever, like, if there is a discussion ever to, if you mind scrolling out a little bit there. If there's ever a discussion of opening this road, we could in theory check both ends of it. Okay, well, in that case, we could quietly remove the posts. We don't necessarily, obviously the HOA would understand that, the residents would understand that, but we wouldn't tell the outside world, hey, we're removing these posts, take this shortcut. It's not even a shortcut when you.
It's not a shortcut anymore.
It's not, it's actually not a shortcut. But we could put some type of counter here and then at the other entrance and then have that data, because that'll show, well, we'll be able to take the net and that's who's cutting through.
We could certainly do a study to figure out if people do
But
cut through.
I think the
as
key
well.
though,
But the fact is, those turns are restricted, and that's part of the traffic code that was done first thing.
Right only out,
So
right?
there's no out, you cannot exit there.
we'd have to change the
So
traffic code.
either we leave it the way it is and just remove the posts, and then police could effectively enforce it, because it's signed that way. It's signed no exit, I believe, I'll double check it, but that's what's on the books. You can't make a left turn in there.
So where would you go?
It's, well, it's closed, so you're not supposed to.
It's closed,
I-
just like it is now, you have to turn around at that point. and-
But that-
and
that-
make a U-turn.
Yeah, I mean,
I got a ticket.
I think I might suggest, and I mean, I don't know if you'll know these, I mean, you may not know this on the top of your head, Rick, but I mean, right now, there's an island, so that's an automatic kind of an island in the road. Then there's like a weird curb or something.
Yeah, it's
To
a
come
curve.
in on that side, that was a split, that island's in the middle of Turnberry
Yeah,
Drive.
right.
So you used to come in and turn to the right to go
Yeah.
in and come out and turn to the right to come out. And then they built a fence over there because there was nobody going in and the out was for trash and emergency vehicles.
So I mean, I might suggest, like, if we were to go down the road to say we're not gonna do delineator posts and gates or whatever anymore, okay, so that answers this side of the question. There's gonna be a gate, we get rid of the delineators, great. There is also then this weird thing where half of this fence is now missing, and to be honest, I don't get a lot of complaints from other people, but the one thing I do hear about is that specific area is unattractive. So I mean, I would think that's not up to the HOA, obviously, to do a curb cut or whatever that, I don't know how to do that. I don't know how much that costs, I don't know what any of that is. So that's kind of one of those things where if we were to be able to decide, hey, we'd like to get some information, so we know, is it $200,000 to open the road? If it is, we probably don't want to do that. If it's $20,000, it's also still not in the budget. But I mean, all of this section is in bad shape. I mean, this is from this year. No, this is from
May
12 years
2012.
ago.
That's
So
an older photo, yeah, probably good, yeah.
it looks worse.
We can get some different dates. Keep it.
So I mean,
Yeah, you're at 22.
yeah.
All the islands and Strecker were put in well after this was closed off.
So I mean, I don't know. I don't know what it takes to take that curb out. I don't know. But
I think you're talking tens of thousands, not hundreds of thousands, but it certainly is an expense, but.
I just think like to me, that's the kind of thing, if we're gonna have the conversation, then it enables us to go, it is the mechanism that this public safety people are asking us to figure out, like, what is the mechanism that does this? So whether it's here or, on Joe's Way or whatever it is up there, like if some, I don't
You know,
know.
it's interesting because they would never let us close it off 20-some years ago.
Right.
They had to have the drive overs to do this. I mean, that was the fire district, Metro West would not allow that to be blocked that way. So that was the option. And the homeowners said they would take care of full maintenance on that because the city said it's a public street.
And I also think, I mean, from a larger process standpoint, this enables us to kind of take like, well, this guy was here and now that guy is there, or this is what we're doing, like, this is just the answer. We're
I
not
think-
doing this.
Should have done it 20 years ago.
So along those lines, Does anybody, let's see, what are we talking?
Is there, Thomas, is there any, what you suggested, is there any public safety concerns with what you?
Opening it?
stated? Yeah,
I think that, you know, you need to do a study to understand. I think didn't we do a study, Rick, that showed there was not?
Four cars.
Yeah, it wasn't very
And
many.
it was the
that-
same car 4 times.
Yeah, that, and I think that, you know, there could be, you know, it depends. People speed everywhere, so it's a people
Right.
problem.
right.
If you're driving through that street, you're just as likely probably to speed than you are on Strecker. I will say if there's cars that are parked on Turnberry, that will help with the speed, but overall, I mean, I think a lot of people have most likely been naturally taught that they just don't use that entrance, and I think they would notice us doing something if we cleared out the other side, but I think if you slowly remove those posts and change well, you're gonna have to do an
Put a
ordinance to
stop
change the
sign?
traffic code, but you put a stop sign there and then have the traffic code corrected. I think it could be done, at least for now, and then plan. So
Yeah, figure out what it is.
I mean, it's probably, I mean, like Mr. Brown said, it's not hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's removing it and then overlaying it.
Okay, well, so here is our suggested motion. If somebody wants to amend it or change it or whatever, this is what
You would
it
get
says. I move that the Administration Public Works Committee acknowledge the recommendation from the Board of Public Safety regarding street obstructions and request that staff provide a framework for implementation. This should include an inventory of current barriers, which we've already got, criteria for evaluating and removal based on risk or disrepair, and policy guidance for future developments. Upon completion of this review, the item should then advance to the full council for discussion. We seem to have most of that, so I guess maybe it's just a move it up. Yes, sir.
So maybe the motion that you have is to move forward with the recommendation from the safety board, but have the council now adopt our policies. And then behind that is to do something about Turnberry.
Sure.
I mean, I wouldn't tie the two together. I
No,
would do the
there's
other one.
definitely separate things.
But the money you're gonna spend on Turnberry will more than clean up that intersection.
Yep.
I mean, I think it would make it a much better, but the enforcement of whatever you're gonna do, I think should be the big thing, real, because it's always been a chance. There was no place to put a police. I put in driveways and they could get a few. But Strecker Road, once the islands went in, it slowed down some too, so.
Lauren, I see you got your hand up.
Yeah, can you just, you're making it two separate motions now, is that correct? The general board and then a separate one about Turnberry?
Yeah, so the general one, I guess, is to accept the general one would just be to accept whatever public safety said, basically, move that forward, and then there will be a secondary one specific to Turnberry.
Yeah, for public streets for the whole city. So that would take out anything that's in planning now. And then Turnberry would, the study and all that stuff could take a lot longer to get it done.
Right.
Well, in this case, would this be, well, I guess it's going to full council, but I guess this is a recommendation tonight, though, to start looking at opening it up and having that study done to do the net of who's crossing over. But not,
I just think it'd make it a little bit easier than just saying, public safety said this, so that part we need to change our ordinances to move forward. Then how to best handle the Turnberry scenario so that the neighbors are all in the loop.
So we'll do two motions. The first one is suggesting, and Rick, tell me how much of this, I think you've got most of this already in place, right? Like the inventory and all that stuff. So let's see, this should include an inventory of the current barriers, so we have that. Criteria for evaluating removal based on risk and or disrepair, you kind of have that, you could probably put something like that together, I assume, right?
Possibly, yeah.
Okay, so that'll stay there. Removal and policy guidance for future developments, that's, I assume that's kind of more of, is that you or is that Joe? Rick, I don't even know.
It
Both of
might
you
be
guys.
more Joe, but certainly Joanne made the minimum.
Okay, so basically, I mean, I would think that the way I'm reading this is the guidance for future developments is there are no gates or delineators. I don't know how much more guidance we
On
need
public streets.
on public streets. So I guess we could take that out even, because that's part of it. That's accepting in what they've already got. Okay, and then we're gonna send this to the council. When's that? Next week? Okay.
the motion from the council originally was to get bids on the gate, so they will get copies of the bids with the recommendations from both the Board of Public Safety and.
But that would be two different things, right? Because if we're gonna split them up, then this is the first thing, and then we get the bids for
So
Turnberry.
have a new item, so have Turnberry as.
Because there should really be
and
two
then-
different things.
And then have the more general discussion about removing obstructions from the right of way.
That sound right?
Public safety is the first one, right?
Yeah, so the first one is no gates or delineators.
Correct.
Period.
And then that will kind of go over to where it's in the development, in the planning.
And then we go, yep, and then Rick can go, so you guys asked before to get this, ostensibly it doesn't matter, but this is what it is. And now we're gonna have a conversation about
The best way to.
what we do next. Okay. Let me clarify this one a little bit, because it seems more complicated than it needs to be. Okay. So I move that the Admin and Public Works Committee, I'll send it to you, Amy, you don't have to write it. So I'm not sure this is what we want. I move that the Admin and Public Works Committee acknowledge the recommendation from the Board of Public Safety regarding the evaluation and potential removal of street obstructions and request the city staff to develop a framework for implementation. The framework should include clear criteria for assessing removal based on public safety risk, access limitations, and the condition of disrepair of the obstructions. Let's see if we might have it. Furthermore, the city shall not authorize the installation of any new gates or permanent street obstructions moving forward in order to maintain consistent access for emergency services, maintenance, and public circulation. Upon completion of this review, the item shall be scheduled for discussion at the next city council work session. Sound right?
Sure.
Is that good for you guys?
The term, yeah. that-
Not the Turnberry, this is just in general.
Which that might take a little bit of work for Monday, but are we talking about all gates, private streets too, or just?
Not private streets, no, this is just public streets. So the idea would be, what this is, ostensibly what this motion is saying, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong. What we're saying is, moving forward, no more gates or blockage of streets on public, or blockages of roads on public roadways, period. On top of that, on public roadways, we need to have just a generalized process of what triggers a removal of something that is already there. Like, we're not getting in the cars on Tuesday and going and jackhammering out gates. That's not what this is about. And then the next part will be specific to Turnberry.
So again, with Turnberry, it does look like we've cold patched some of the concrete up there. So maybe in this year, next year, maybe doing some slab replacement and it'd give you a little bit more opportunity to do anything that way if you needed to. I don't think it's a rush because traffic's been limited, except taking the delineators out and moving them back down.
And cleaning up that gate or whatever.
But you can see it, the patch has been put in there. Trash trucks can drive over, snow plows can get over it.
just.
So it's no access for public,
Oh,
but it allows emergency vehicles to
Okay.
come in that
So
way.
Rick or Tom, would it be better for you guys to have it in maybe three parts? So one is everything moving forward, no gates and blockages.
Standpoint to adopt a policy for no gates moving forward
Right.
for
And then two is reviewing
Turnberry's
whatever,
gate.
well, all the
proposal.
gates, really,
Okay,
that exist, public gates. So one is no gates and delineators moving forward. Two, reviewing whatever gates are there and whatever our assessment is on what triggers the removal of whatever is there. And then three
in the
is
public right of way.
in public right away, and then three is gonna be whatever we're gonna do this other thing. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. Do you guys want a fancy one, or is everybody good on that? Amy, I can write a fancy one if you want.
I think it's good, but I think
Simpler
by
the better.
breaking it
Makes
that
more
way,
sense.
it deals with the whole issue to start with. I mean, we still have some pretty tight regulations on private property.
Yeah.
You know, all the owners and all that, because those have been some knockdown, drag out fights over the years. Some reason Molina had left town,
Right,
wouldn't give it to him.
okay, so let's start this over a little bit, and we're almost I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. Okay. So first one, establish a policy prohibiting the installation of any new gates or permanent street obstructions on public roadways effective immediately. This action is intended to preserve public access, ensure emergency service availability, and maintain consistent citywide infrastructure standards. Anybody care to make that? Mr. Albers, anybody care to second it? Tracy will second it. Okay, all those in favor, Nathan and Lauren, you hear that one? Okay, all those in favor of motion number one to prohibit the installation of any gates or permanent street obstructions moving forward, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone object? Anyone abstain? Okay, that one passes. Number two is gonna be I move that the staff review and create a framework for the evaluation of existing street obstructions.
I think that other than, based off this list, other than Turnberry, there wouldn't be any other major obstructions we'd be looking to review.
Yeah, that's fine, but you still need to say, like, we know that there's 13 or whatever there is.
Mhm.
So in order to not have the people of Wild Horse or wherever think that we're coming tomorrow to get their gates, we're going to say, this is the policy in terms of how this works. That makes sense to everybody?
Are you proposing that all the other gates be reviewed?
I mean, we need an inventory, which we have,
Okay,
and then we need to have just like the city needs to have a policy of like, this is what triggers one being removed. So if it
Okay.
is if it's, if somebody drives a car through it
Right.
and it's now damaged,
Right.
then probably it's gonna get removed, not
Right.
replaced, that
Okay.
kind of thing. But I think we wanna make sure that people understand, like, we're not just,
okay,
Ripping
that's what I
everything
was clarifying, yeah.
And last is the Turnberry item.
Right.
Separately.
So the city staff is directed to develop a formal policy outlining the criteria and process for the removal of existing gates and permanent street obstructions. This policy should consider factors such as public safety risk, infrastructure condition, access limitations, and alignment with citywide mobility goals. Sound right?
Do we need to add anything about enforcement? It should, to tie into the ordinances, or those all have to be individually done? So by doing all of this, making sure the enforcement of any of these changes you make, should that be included in that motion or not?
So like the police, like,
Yeah, the police, because you're still gonna have to go back and treat those as, otherwise people will take the ticket and go to the traffic.
oh,
court.
you're talking about going back and correcting the traffic code when necessary.
Exactly.
Yeah, we can, I think it would
I mean,
correspond.
it's just one more step to think
Yeah.
that if we put it in the ordinance, then
Yeah.
it kind of makes that you guys don't have to do the.
I
three
think
readings
for
of it.
Turnberry specifically, I think that one will be, if that's the direction the council wishes to go, that could be handled together, the same night.
Wouldn't we also, but
You'd
if for the wider city though, I think Ed, what you're saying is like, and we're not doing this, I'm just saying like that one in Wild Horse, for instance, like if there's something if there is something in the code that says you can or can't do whatever, then along with the explanation as to why what we're doing, the traffic code should be in there to go, this is what it says. If we take it out, this is what we have to
Cause
do.
even like on the private, you have to, how many feet you have to give them to allow a school bus to get off there. There's some pretty tight regulations there. But the question would be then, when you do make these changes, you kind of have to go back and look at the traffic ordinances to make sure that we haven't blocked them ourselves.
Do you need that in the motion or you kind of get that?
I need that in
Yeah,
there.
those will go hand in hand.
Okay. Anybody want to make the second one just in terms of like, they're gonna give us this inventory and tell us how this is supposed to work? Mr. Marshall, anybody want to second it? Mr. Jaxi, okay. Lauren and Nathan, you guys hear that one?
Yeah,
Okay.
it sounds it's not just specific to Turnberry, correct?
No, so this is gonna be across, this is gonna be like a citywide thing. This is the mechanisms required to do whatever we're gonna do.
Okay.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, that one passes. Amy, I'll email that one to you. And now we get to our last component here, which I guess is gonna be our Turnberry conversation. So what do we want to say for that one?
To have staff review the appropriate options of reopening safely. Turnberry Place Drive, I think is what it's called.
So, yep, okay.
So the gate quotes have to go forward to the council just technically.
Yep.
As because the motion requested them
But
come back,
that-
but it'll come with what you guys are saying right now.
So the first thing will be,
Yes,
right,
yes.
Arms up too.
yes, Lauren.
Yeah, look, so this has been an issue that came up a couple of years ago, actually, and it just, we're just now coming to conclusions. This is gonna be such what would be considered a betrayal of trust, because all of the conversations that they've had on staff, on Zoom, with us, back when Don was on council, what they made clear from the beginning is that they wanted to work with the city to have a change, but they did not want the road open. So no one's asking for this but council. And I don't envision a world where somebody isn't broadsided for trying to take a left-hand turn that's illegal there. I think we're gonna have wrecks. So from their perspective, they're gonna come to a meeting. They're not gonna get the improvement they were expecting, which we can explain why, because it affects response time. That's all fair. I agree with that. But they're gonna get the one thing that they didn't ask for and specifically said they didn't want. And I think they would just rather leave it alone and have it look like heck. I feel really bad about that. And then they're gonna look at other areas where there is a gate, because we've done an inventory on it, and it's not a big deal for council to spend the money and remove a gate that already exists, right? So they're gonna go, not only did we not get a gate, but they get to keep theirs. That's what's gonna happen. So it's gonna make a ton of people angry for nothing that they asked for. It's just us deciding that it should be open.
Well, I hear you, but it isn't us. I mean, it's the people that go fix houses that are burning, and this is the second time.
But they can already
In
turn,
2009.
but they can turn in there as it is now over top of the delineators. What they're asking for was us not to change it with a gate. They can already get through the intersection and do get through the intersection.
They were saying that it is difficult in the way it is currently configured for them to get in there even now without the gate, because it's a weird turn around that thing. By the way, this isn't saying we're gonna go open this road up tomorrow. This is applying the process that the city is creating, which would apply anywhere. If Turnberry's intersection is found to be deficient, which in my estimation it currently is, then my question would be, like, even if we're talking about a gate, why haven't they fixed it to this point? They haven't fixed it for, I don't know, 15 years.
Yeah, I guess my point is the department never said, hey, we want this widened so we can turn more easily. The fire department didn't say that before and bring it to our attention. But if that's what they want now, we could widen that and still keep the road closed. There's a way, you know what I mean?
I get it. I hear what you're saying, Lauren. I would just say, and I appreciate it, it is an important issue to you and it is part of your ward, and I am not trying to lessen that at all. And you can certainly advocate that position, and I support you in your ability to do that. But I think that, of all of the places that I'm aware of in the city, this is one that, the resolution, hey, this could go to the council and nobody likes it. I have no idea. Our job is to move it to the place where people talk about it. And so, I think that you have the ability to have those conversations. But I understand that people of Turnberry may not be super thrilled about this. There's a lot of people that drive that road that aren't thrilled about what it looks like currently. So I don't know how we make one set of people feel good and the other bad. We don't have a policy as of yet. We're about to create one and then we apply it. That's how policy works. I think she might have locked it. No, okay. All right. So,
She's on mute.
yeah, okay. So this is the suggestion. You can take it or leave it, change it, don't do it, whatever. The suggestion is, I move that city staff be directed to develop a plan for safely reopening the Turnberry Crossing at Strecker Road, which is currently obstructed. This plan should include appropriate traffic calming measures, signage, and design adjustments to ensure safe access for all users. Once complete, the proposed plan shall be forwarded to the full city council for review and consideration of further implementation. You guys, anybody want to make that or change it or whatever?
Or do you wanna say, research the possibility of opening, like, we're saying open it.
No, we're saying, we're telling them to look, I mean, we're not telling them to open
Look
it
at
right
it.
now. We're saying,
Okay, look at the
I
possibility.
mean, if they come back and they say it's $1
Say it's
million,
not a good
then the
idea.
answer's like, okay, no.
Okay.
So
That's
do
still
you
it.
need to, in this motion, do you need to address the fact that you had the bids, but now the bids?
I think that this needs, like, per the motion from council that came out, the reason why we got bids in the first place was to get bids and bring them back to council, but we had Board of Public Safety weigh in since the fire department reached out. Then now we're having a broader discussion. So I think the idea is you still have to bring those bids to the full council and say, these are the bids we got per the motion. But since then, Board of Public Safety has met, here's the feedback from Board of Public Safety. Administration Public Works Committee has met, here's their, here's the information from there as well. And it's,
And then at the same time, the Ashley subdivision, that gate won't exist. So there will be no other gates. Right now, there aren't any gates on any public streets.
public streets.
But there will be no more in the planning process. So just shutting down Turnberry, I mean, we don't have a gate to take out. It's just to figure out what to do with a road that, a public street that has been shut down to through traffic for 30 years. Yeah, so you don't need, I guess my question was, do you need to tie in anything about the bids on the gate, or is you just let
I
that
think-
die as the motion moves forward?
I think you have to present just per the motion that was requested, you have to present it, but you have like the information provided with it that says, hey, it seems as if the council committee is moving in a different
So
direction.
this is what it says. The motion theoretically would be, I guess, assuming that that other thing goes. So I move that the city council formally acknowledge that the prior motion to solicit bids for gates at the Turnberry Crossing is no longer applicable under the city's updated policy prohibiting new street obstructions. City staff is directed to evaluate and develop options for safely reopening the Turnberry Crossing at Strecker Road, including traffic calming, signage, or other design measures as needed. These options should be presented to the full city council for review and determination of next appropriate steps.
You
So,
can send that to us.
yeah, I mean, I'm assuming that that's what you guys want to do.
Lauren or Nathan have any comment?
I'm okay.
Okay. Who?
Go
Okay,
ahead.
so Cliff will make it. Ed will second it.
Second.
Well, anybody want to talk any more about it? I know that this is not fun, Lauren. I understand. I apologize. All right, with no discussion, all those in favor of pushing this one forward on Turnberry, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Opposed.
Any abstentions? All right, so we will have this conversation up the road here a little bit. So that was a good one. All right. Last but not least, and I'm sorry we're going out on a downer for you, Lauren, but I did want to give anybody a chance, since this is our last meeting as this group, if anybody wanted to say anything, especially those of you guys that won't be returning, now would be the time.
Keep it clean.
Yeah, let's try to keep it clean.
Known for otherwise.
If nobody has anything to say, I will just say, I do greatly appreciate your guys' votes in making me the chair. You guys have been a great group to work with, and I'm sad that Larry isn't here with us tonight because he's certainly added a lot to these conversations over the years. So you will hear this again in a week or so, a couple days here at the council meeting, but for those of you guys that are leaving the council, I have greatly appreciated working with all of you, and I will sincerely miss the opportunity to keep doing that. So I thank you guys all for your service on everything we do here. I know it isn't the most exciting thing in the world, but it's important work. So with that, I guess we'll take a motion to adjourn. Made by Ms. Nyan. Anybody care to second? Seconded by Mr. Albers. All those in favor, please